OTB's The Hurling Pod.
With Board Gosh Energy.
Hurling. It's anyone's game.
It is the weekend coming into the All-Ireland semi-finals. A real sense of déjà vu ahead of this Saturday and Sunday's games. Last year, Limerick, on the route to winning the All-Ireland, defeated Galway by 3 points in the semi-finals, 27 points to 121. While Kilkenny eased to victory against Clare, 226 to 20 points. It's a chance for Limerick to get to the All-Ireland Senior Hurling final for a fourth successive year and a fifth time in 6 seasons. Galway lost in the final in 2018 when James Skehill was playing. James Skehill, how are you?
Not too bad, Will. Paul, good to see you.
Kilkenny were in the final in 2019. Paul was involved in the win against Limerick in the semi-final. They were also in last year's final when they lost out against Limerick. And Clare last reached the final back in 2013. Paul Murphy, how are you?
Good. How are you doing, lads?
Very well. It's a slightly early recording for us. Skehill, by all means, kick in there. Go on.
What?
I thought you were about to kick in there.
He looked like it. He looked like he's about to wind up on something very early tonight, but he wasn't.
I was going to say, great to see you, Murph. It's great to see you. You're looking very salubrious today.
Just call us. It was intuition there. I'd say myself and Will. You look like a coiled spring there, ready to go.
I'll leave that for a moment.
Okay.
Right.
If Will asks the right question, you might get the right answer.
That could literally mean anything. So here we go. Yeah. Well, will we start off with some of the correspondence then, before we actually get into this? Because this was one of the more unexpected ones. Deirdre2837 on YouTube. Paul Murphy looks like a young Liam Neeson. James Skehill is gas, absolutely no filter. Galway Vaboo coming off the back of last week. So I did a bit of research and we had a look here, particularly for the YouTube audience. Here is a young Liam Neeson. And here is Paul Murphy at the All-Ireland preview night 4 years ago. James Skehill, I'll let you decide. Is there any resemblance whatsoever between Liam Neeson and Paul Murphy?
Well, he's small arms anyway, yeah.
Hey! You know where to hurt me.
I am terrible. You know, let's say when people come in, especially family, and you have a baby or a child, and they go, "Oh, she looks just like her." I can never tell. I'm used to that. Like more people have a twin. Yeah. You could have a twin, right? And I'd say, I'm not sure what they look like. It's just, I'm terrible that way.
So is this your way of saying I don't look like Liam Neeson? Is that it?
Listen to me, Dad. I personally can't see it myself.
I can't see it either, to be honest.
Yeah.
I can't. I'd like to take it. I can't.
Yeah. Like, jeez, no. I'm looking for facial features. I'm looking for like hair. Small arms, fair enough. Yeah,
we need to get more information. Is it like young Liam Neeson? Is it like Michael Collins' Liam Neeson or Schindler's List, or like what are we looking for here? Because there's Taken. Is it Taken to have a few grey hairs and a bit of character now? What's the story like? So.
Well, the image I searched for was literally young Liam Neeson. So this is what Google threw back when I put in young Liam Neeson. Is the image that the YouTube audience can see right now? It doesn't really work for the audio, but Google young Liam Neeson. You'll see a picture of him in a tank top.
Well, he's for people on the audio, he's in a grey tank top. This would be the politically correct phrase to use there. Mm-hmm. So I may get one of them to hang around Croke Park this weekend and see if anyone mistakes me for the doppelganger. Dion Dublin and Roy Keane were there this weekend, so they might think Liam Neeson's there next weekend then.
Yeah, saw that. Weren't the best football quarterfinals made for Dion Dublin to see, but he seemed to enjoy himself based on the videos that he had up a little bit earlier on. It's Sunday when we're recording this week. You get to bring people around Croke Park on Saturday this coming week, Murph.
Yeah, doing the Legends Tour on Saturday in Croke Park for Bord Gosh.
Skehill, where was your invite to do a tour?
My name and Legend don't go together with. I'm a big enough man to admit that. Don't you worry.
He's in the Hall of Fame in Croke Park. That's where he is. He doesn't do the Legends Tour, so I'm doing the Legends Tour.
I've got time for that. I'm a busy man.
It feels like we've been left behind this weekend, Skehill. We're going to be probably watching on TV on Sunday, and this lad is doing commentary for the BBC, and he's doing a Legends Tour.
And why aren't we invited to the Legends Tour?
Well, you can buy a ticket if you want. I'll send you on the link afterwards. There's no freebies around here, Skehill.
We're not up on the road now. We're like brothers this stage now. Come on, you have to bail me out for one.
I'll get one ticket and you can fight over it then. So
you can give me 18's ticket, right? She's
not even going.
Oh, wow.
It's a rare lady listen to a Kilkenny man.
She asked, do you want me to go? And I said, I don't know. Like, because would I be just looking at you and then you think I'm a clawhammer then going around explaining all these stories? Or would you be interested? I don't know. So she's not actually, I don't think she's going at the moment anyway. So, and I don't know who's going, to be honest. I don't know who's going to turn up. I don't know if 5 people will turn up or 20 people. I actually don't know much about it that way. So,
well, the obvious response to this, scale, if we want to slag him back, is that there are still tickets available on the week of the tour, which can't be a good sign.
Oh, yeah.
Jeez, come here. I was going to say it, right? But actually I held back, which is unlike me.
Do you know what I'm going to do, right? I have a plan. I have a plan for it. It's like, do you ever hear about someone if they're doing like a book signing, but no one turns up? So you just pretend you're in buying books. I'm just going to go in and like, if nobody really turns up, I'm going to pretend I'm there for the tour and that I'm not actually the tour guide for this. So I have a fallback. if nothing happens. We'll see.
I thought it was Paul Murphy Kerry.
I'll turn up with my Kerry jersey. Yeah. Just say it's Paul Murphy Kerry. Sorry, lads. He's not around this weekend. But yeah. I'll be grand. I'll be fine.
Finest.
Well, you got a good reason to go and see Galway and Limerick. Skelly, you going up along on Saturday to watch the game as well?
Yeah, hopefully herself and myself can go up and be 2 extra Galway people. I said there's a good crowd going to go from Galway from talking around the place in different areas, both. Like Galway's very regional when it comes to sport. Like you could say, truthfully speaking, the south and the east is hurling domination. The north and the west is football. But even from being in around the city and heading towards more of the north, there's a good lot of people heading to the game too. So I'd be hopefully we get a good crowd because in fairness, we need everything we can get.
True enough. Before we get into the hurling itself, 2 unusual comments come from the YouTube as well, which will allow Skehill to respond to. Deck 2031. Skehill is about as likeable as a dangleberry on a Connemara heifer, which I believe was sent to you by some of the lads from your club as well.
A dangleberry on a Connemara heifer.
It's very specific.
It's very specific.
It's very specific.
It's very specific and quite absolute, isn't it?
there's no wriggle room there, is there?
No, it's straight like dangleberry on a Connemara heifer. I'll take it. I don't mind.
That's surely worse than saying you hate tip. In a scale, if this was graded, that's surely worse, is it? In terms of people insulting each other, going across back and forth.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Is he comparing me to an animal? Or shit?
I think he's comparing you to the dangleberry which is stuck on the heifer.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. Come here. If that's his comparison.
Skehill, the best thing we can say here is you evoke a lot of colourful emotions in people. I think that's what we've established over last week. It's a good thing.
He really does.
It does.
Micheál Cunningham as well on the Instagram messages. There's actually really good questions generally across the Instagram. And then a few minutes before we come on air, Micheál Cunningham, Skehill is awful. Not a question, but just needs saying.
Really? Does that actually need saying, does it? Well, I think Micheál is talking pure shite, really, to be honest. Micheál, you're fucking awful too. And if you were one less listener, I wouldn't give a shite. So off you go. Go and listen to other people's podcast. No, I was like, we were down in Limerick last night, myself and the minor management team, and like we got a ferocious, great reaction. Everyone, literally, when I say every person I met was quite complimentary to the pod and the people within. So yeah, I'll take the views of the masses versus the views of one.
That's good. The other one I want you to respond to, Murph, because I didn't ask the question, but 2 people messaged me about the fact, I see you didn't ask Murphy about Kilkenny's tactical fouling. He's trying to, kind of spin the referee before the game next week. And we were accused of a hatchet job on Clare last week when you were talking about potentially maybe some of the easy frees that were being looked for and so on. And then I listened back to the pod to double check. I'm like, I don't even remember asking that question. It was Skehill who asked you the question about it, not me.
People getting skewed. That's the problem there. But even actually, if we're going to address it now, the Kilkenny one, that's open. Like the floor is open there for if people want to say that Kilkenny have any cynical fouling. Like let's say going back years ago, people used to say it was the chopping on the hands, and that's what Kilkenny players, or myself or whoever used to do. At the moment, you'd associate the spare arm tackle with Limerick. And then I was highlighting the one with Adam Hogan in terms of, potentially trying to get a few frees off the ref and maybe getting like the likes of Gerard Hegarty booked and different things. So the floor is open there for if anybody wants to say what Kilkenny do or what Galway do. I didn't reference either of them because I can't think of anything at the moment that is blatantly obvious that, and I haven't seen anything in media either or or people saying online that Kilkenny are doing X at the moment, and how aren't referees picking up on it? Similarly with Galway. Now, there's the floor. If anybody wants to say that Kilkenny do this, or Galway do that, or Cork do whatever, fire away. But there's nothing jumping to mind at the moment for me. And I'd happily get into a conversation about it if anyone does have anything they see.
Well, Murph,
Did you have a slight... No, go on, Skehill, you go first.
Sorry, the reason I actually asked the question of you as a full backline member is because it was blatantly obvious to me over their last 2 games that I wouldn't call it cynical fouling, but I thought that they were, I suppose, getting away with excessive kind of hurley action. Do you know what I mean?
Okay, yeah.
Like so when you mentioned out the teams there and certain, I suppose, characteristics of said teams, nothing stands out to me bar what I'm seeing in the Clare backline. That's all. I get you. The Limerick spare arm, like they have kind of, I'd say, perfected that over the last number of years, and now you see teams at it an awful lot. Yeah, but they were not the instigators; they were the inventors, that you could say to a degree. And I asked you the question from a genuine place, like as a cornerback man. Did you see anything? So I'll take the flak again, right?
No. Look, I will happily take the flak, and I will take the flak entirely for the Colin Galvin, Ian Galvin mistake, because my head was rooted in my phone at the time that it came up. I was just kind of, you know yourself, you've got the Instagram questions open because we're in the middle of question season at the time, and I was kind of half listening while you guys were answering, and then I see all these Ian Galvin comments coming down along in the YouTube, and then there was a couple of tweets, and I went, oh, he said Ian, not Colin, didn't he? Yeah,
and I was the same because I was picturing Colin and all when I was saying Ian, but I suppose just at the moment with Ian Galvin being to the fore, it's kind of just, I suppose, slip of the tongue. I don't know what you're going to call it, but
you're sacked.
Gone.
Out of here.
Blasphemy.
Two different lads on next week now.
How could I? Jesus.
Oh, look. It wasn't my proudest week either, Skehill. In the middle of the crappy quiz during the week, the pressure kind of kicks on when a hurling question comes up and the lads are going, well, we've got the host of the hurling pod here, so he'll definitely do well in this round. And, of course, I'm kind of half listening, and Mick is reading the questions. He's sitting in as a quiz master this week. And basically what I hear is goals in the championship this year. So, of course, I'm trying to keep my paper away from Nathan Murphy as much as possible, who's sitting beside me. And I've got the head down and I'm writing down every championship goal that I can think of this year. Not even thinking about it. Next thing the round starts, I think the first question might have been a Galway answer to start. I think it might have been Conor Whelan. And I'm like, right, Leinster final, Killian Buckley. And next thing I turn around and go, it had to be 2 goals or more.
Yeah.
So the lesson is, kids, don't try and show off. Listen to the question properly before it starts. Or you're going to be sitting there with your hands in your head for the next 5 minutes.
You were confused for about 10 seconds. It was like, yeah, Killian Buckley did score. And then he even said, over the last 2 weeks. I was like, what? Over the last 2 weeks? What are you talking about? It was 4 weeks ago. But there's lots of... And I think Nathan won the points in the end by basically answering once. And then
by default.
Yourself and Shane then just make a balls of it. That was it.
You see, the reason I was saying the 2 weeks thing was, I thought the point that Mick was trying to make was the goals had to be in the All-Ireland Championship. And I was kind of going, we scored a goal in the Leinster final. You've just taken the last 2 weeks then for the preliminary quarterfinal and the quarterfinal. And of course, then you realise you had the question absolutely arseways at the start. And you have a wonderfully embarrassing moment when you go on to lose by 1 point.
There you are.
So that's me gone, that's Murph gone, and that's you gone now. So we're all sacked.
Yeah, there's a new pod next week. It's, I don't know, hosted by Joe Canning with Tommy Welsh and Anthony Nash. It's going to be a great pod. The Hurling Pod 2.0. We'll dip into the games in a second. Just a reminder as well for anyone who's joining us, if you're not already one of the people who've been following the pod throughout the year, we have our live show coming up on the 20th of July. Joe Canning is the first confirmed guest. By the time we're on next week, and my plan, without having arranged it with Paul Murphy at all, so we'll do it at the end, is to do a live show this Sunday after the semi-finals. We'll have announcement about some more guests at that point as well, ahead of the 20th. But tickets have been flying so far. It's a massive venue, so you will be able to get tickets. This isn't me doing some kind of false sell to say you have to race because the tickets are going to be gone. There's still plenty of tickets left, but they are going to 2 wonderful charities as well if you purchase a ticket. The Dylan Quirk Foundation and Focus Ireland. Focus Ireland are Bord Gáis Energy's charity for the year, and we really wanted as a group to support the Dylan Quirk Foundation, especially after they weren't allowed to put in the jerseys for the Limerick Tipperary game earlier this year. So if you come along in the night, not only are you going to have a really entertaining night a few days out from the All-Ireland final, you're also supporting 2 really good charities as well. So we've that to look forward to. We've got these 2 semi-finals to look forward to this coming weekend. Maybe we start off with the game on Saturday. We'll do them in order across the weekend. So Limerick against Galway, Skehill, I don't have to remind you, the last 3 times the teams have met, Limerick have come out on top. Very little between the sides though. So 2022, 27 to 121. 2020, 27 points to 24, 3 points both times round. And then the All-Ireland final, 316 to 218 back in 2018. So like there has been only a puck of a ball between the teams. And even when you think back to last year, 8 or 9 minutes to go, when Monaghan sticks over a point for Galway were actually leading in that game last year.
Yeah, I suppose, I remember last year, I can't remember what minute it happened, but it was kind of, we got off to a really bad start this year. Aaron Gillane was causing awful hassle under the Hogan kind of canal side. And I remember they put up a picture, I think Bill Murray could have been actually in attendance, and they put up a picture and there was a big kind of roar and cheer out of the Limerick crowd. And I was kind of, this is awkward now. We could be in for a drubbing here, the way things were transpiring. But ultimately, the boys grounded out and they kept going. Brian got a good goal after half-time. The next game became a battle, and we had opportunities to win that game. We came away from that. When you play really, really good teams, top teams, and you could have got that one. That was one where I came away from going, geez, we could have snuck that game because we had chances, and we performed very well. And I can always take getting beaten when we perform well. I can't take getting beaten when we perform bad. And we performed fierce well, but ultimately it came down to probably their bench had more of an impact than ours. Whereas in this year, I'm hoping that our bench has probably closed the gap a bit there. You said that they've beaten us three in a row. Like the count is Limerick 8, Galway 4. We haven't beaten them since 2005, so 18 years is a long time to go without beating the county. And like I said, we played them a few times since. So like we're in for it. It's a very, very tough ask. Like I'm not going to beat around the bush here and say I'm extremely confident. Like I'm not confident. I'm semi-confident that we can produce a performance. But if you ask me, are they going to win? Like I can't say it with full certainty because of the juggernaut that they're going facing. It's going to be a very tough game. But I will say, interesting. I just went back through the numbers for Limerick to see, how there's kind of a somewhat of a perception, even though they've won the Munster final, that they've kind of regressed a touch. Like their concession rate is actually down. It's better, even though they've lost Declan Hannon and lost Sean Finn. They've conceded less in this year's championship. Like I actually couldn't believe that. I thought when I went through the numbers, I'd see that it went up because they've lost such influential people. Declan's in and out, you know what I mean, right? Their scoring rate has come down, right? So they had a points differential last year, and on average they were winning 3.5 points, whereas this year it's 0.7. So the gap has come down. So I'm hopeful that we can keep it to a tight game. I'm hoping we beat them by 10 points. Not going to happen. So in other things, we keep it to a tight game. It's in the matchup side of things. It comes a question of clientele, and last year we had Dahi at full back, but he's been so good at centre back this year. Do we rejig our team to try and nullify theirs? I'd be always in a big believer of trying to get some matchups right, yeah, but I wouldn't want to rejig our team too much because Dahi's been so good and forceful at 6. So have we to put him back to go on to Gillane? Do you chance Darren Morrisey on someone as effective as Gillane and put Mac on Flanagan? There's a lot of questions to answer, and no one can answer them here until we see the ball thrown in on Saturday. But look, here's to hoping it's going to be a good game.
Do you want to take up that point, Murph, about what they do about the marking on Gillane? Because last year, Gillane got 8 points. I think 6 of them were from play. It was Diarmaid Burns who had a lot of the frees for Limerick in that game against Galway. So obviously they need to try and stop him this time round. He was so influential, particularly when the game was in the melting pot late on last year. Do Galway make a switch, given that they've made that 3-6 change this season already? Do they consider putting Dahi back there to mind the house, or what way would you approach this?
I'm kind of split between two minds here now at the moment. Like my first initial thought is to think that Galway, yes, absolutely, you're going to have one or two things that Galway will want to implement in the game, but I wouldn't think that they should pick maybe one or two things that these are definitely things we need to do, but let's not go and do 3, 4, 5 things where we're completely restructuring what our team is just to react to what Limerick might do. I would trust the defence. Like one thing I've seen from Galway at the moment, which seems to be okay. Like Tipperary game wasn't a great game, but there was nuggets you were taken from it, whereby there was indications that Galway's defence was really starting to be kind of shoring up in places. And the places that I thought was really good was their tracking back and coverage of, let's say, when the ball goes back in over their head, their half back line tracking back, and their midfield and half forwards to extent getting back. And that allows the full back line to actually play with a bit of freedom, because they know, okay, if I'm in a foot race here with Gillane, I can just spoil it, and wait for the fire brigade to come then in terms of lads coming in and crowding out the area. So they seem to have a bit of an understanding there. So with that, I would be saying that go with Grealish or go. I'd say probably go with Grealish anyway. Darren Morrisey seems to be kind of more a bit of a player, nice and tidy player. You know, gets through a lot of work, but he's really comfortable kind of coming out with the ball and kind of supports the play as you develop out the field. So I think he'll want maybe Grealish to sit in. I wouldn't sacrifice Dahi Burke to bring him back there. He's he's having a really good influence at centre back there for Galway, and where I think just driving forward, his ball control. What I saw against Kilkenny that was brilliant was he's just such a calm presence on the ball where he'll get the ball into his hand. You know, pop it off. 99% of what Dahi Burke does is really simple stuff, and he just gets the play back on again for Galway. So I wouldn't stem his influence on the game by putting him back into the full back line. I'd leave him out there, and we even see him popping up with a point or two, or even a goal against Dublin, whereby he knows the moment to kick on and go forward, which is a great attribute to have in a centre back. So I would leave him there, and I'd leave him there with the pretense that, okay, the ball goes in over his head. Dahi should have the freedom to go running back towards the goal and help out as he would be, you know, well experienced in. But you know, the midfielders, the Tommy Monaghan's and these lads have to go and cut off whoever's going to be centre forward. Let's say it's Cian Lynch or whoever it is, Tom Morrisey, whoever's going to be, that they have to go there and cut off his players so Dahi has the freedom to go and do that. So I would trust, if I was Henry, I'd say, look at lads, because for Limerick or for Clare, Galway to go and win this match, they actually have to go and play with a bit of freedom. And part of hurling with that freedom, I think, is having a belief that you're capable of going beating Limerick. And one of the indications in the run into the game is that you don't implement so many things before the game that it looks like you're panicking and it looks like you're afraid of Limerick, where you just go, no, we have the players here. I fully believe it. You know, Grealish, you go on him there, take him, on we go. Whoever's marking him, and if someone else is marking him, if Darren Morrisey, if you're marking him for a few minutes, no problem. But just once we get a chance to, you know, to get our structure back, we'll do that. But I think the big thing for Galway here to do is to start on the front foot, be positive, trust your backs, and play with a very positive, aggressive manner, you know.
Yeah.
Skehill, I think the defending was improved big time. Now, we can take Tipperary's flatness into account here, but compared to the Leinster final, Galway looked a lot better structurally in that game against Tipperary than they did in the Leinster final, where they coughed up a few goals. Yeah,
I agree. We spoke here last week, or the week previous, before the game, that it was a genuine concern of mine, and I would have put probably that as top of the list for the work-ons following on from the Leinster final. And it was really positive to see how they actually worked on it, implemented it, which is tough to do now. It's hard to implement, you know, a major fix like that into a system when you come off the back of a quite a disappointing run. 4 goals was very disappointing. Like, it's hard to remember a day when we conceded 4 goals last. But ultimately, when I think back to the Tipperary game, I can think, now the goal for me was a bit of a freak one. You know, that was kind of, we were the makers of our own downfall of that one. But I can only think of one shot maybe from Alan Tynan, I think in the second half, whereby they got through us. You know, I think Noel McGrath opened up a bit of a split pass, Tynan got in, it ultimately went wide. So like from that perspective, you would say they didn't get through us an awful lot once, you know, in the whole game, whereas on the far side, we got in 6-7 times. So there was opportunities arising there. The thing I suppose the work on for this game is, yes, keep tight at the back. That's an essential. We can't give up anything loose. But in this instance now, from the last day, we 2 of our forwards didn't score. Our midfield didn't score. So if we're going to be successful, like, we have to A, keep a continuance of the defensive structure, and B, we need to take those chances. So if we get an opportunity whereby we get 6 goal opportunities, which I don't think we'll get, truthfully speaking, but let's say we get 2 opportunities, a goal or 3, we've got to take 100% efficiency of those. We need those goals because, like, as we know, Limerick still haven't gone away with the shot count. They're still hitting 45, 50 shots in a game. And they're shooting from all distances, like, so we're going to have to match that. Now, their efficiency has dropped a touch, all right, I'll admit that. However, for us, I think we're going to have to score 2 goals. We scored 1 last year. They scored 27 points. A lot of frees, as you said, away from Jimmy Burns. But we just need to get, let's say, for me, 8 to 15 have to score. And that sounds like a lot. It is, but like, if you limit, let's say 7 or 8 frees, 7 Islands, that's a given. That's going to happen every day. It's just like same with TJ, same with Tony Kelly. You're going to get 7 or 8 frees. So where are we going to get, let's say, 2-15 or 2-17? When you start looking for that, like, you can't, Conor Whelan's not going to do it by himself. There has to be, you have to spread the load. And that's going to take 6-7 people to get that done. Because when you see Limerick beaten, or even close to being beaten, there's an awful lot, there's an array of scores in the opposition, an array. And so that has to happen. That's an essential for me this week, from moving from Tipperary into the Limerick game. We need more scores on the board.
Yeah. I mean, how much of a step is it, Murph? Like last week, you know, a lot of the focus after the game came on how Tipperary didn't perform. But how much more difficult is it to play against this Limerick team compared to, say, Tipperary for Galway? Like, how big is that step coming into this Saturday?
It's certainly a bigger step, but I think it's a bigger step that focuses the mind really well. Like, Galway going to play Tipperary. Look, their minds would have been focused because Tipperary looked sharp against Offaly. I know people might say, okay, well, Offaly weren't at the standard of Tipperary, but nevertheless, Tipperary looked sharp. And, inevitably, if Galway didn't go and perform, they're out of the championship. So you always have that kind of, really, I suppose, focuses the mind. But the thing is here, after the Tipperary game, if I was in the Galway dressing room, I'd be kind of saying, look, whatever's happened to this date, be it losing the Leinster final, be it playing Tipperary, whatever, at the start of the year, January 1st, if someone said to you, you're going to be in an All-Ireland semi-final, you're going to be facing Limerick, that I'm not going to tell you about the rest of the year. You'd go, we'll take that, because now we're in the last four. We have a chance of winning an All-Ireland final, and Galway have a chance of winning an All-Ireland final here, absolutely. And I would say, like, coming into this game this year, they're far closer to Limerick than they were last year. But we even saw last year that they were right up there with Limerick, but just couldn't close it out. But the challenge in itself, because it's the time of the year it's at now, like Kilkenny will have forgotten about the Leinster final at this stage and said, look, that's the Leinster final. Clare will have forgotten about all their previous games. You're now in Croke Park in All-Ireland semi-final, and the games take on a different feel altogether. They feel completely different. So that's why I think this now for Galway. Galway would have just been happy, get over Tipperary. Okay, big victory against your rivals and all this. But inevitably, it was just the fact that now we're where we want to be. We're playing a team that, if we want to win the All-Ireland, we're going to have to beat these lads anyway. And we're probably coming in under the radar. Because it wasn't a great game against Tipperary, similar enough to when we played Cork in 2019, people were like, okay, you bet them, but you're not good enough to go and beat Limerick. So I think it's actually ideal for Galway in that respect, for their preparation, that people are going, yeah, they bet Tipperary, grand, but they're not at the pace, they're not up to the standard for Limerick. That's ideal if you're a Galway supporter, because the last thing you'd want is Galway going out blitzing Tipperary, beating them by 15 or 20 points, and then people bigging you up for 2 weeks before you go into a Limerick game with, real high hopes. Galway would have wanted kept that just to the dressing room, the belief and maybe the bit of arrogance that you can go out there and take a scalp off Limerick. They would have wanted to just constrain that to the dressing room. So it's definitely a bigger challenge, but I always find that these ones were ones that focus the mind so well that they probably draw that extra 5 or 10% out of you, because you're playing such an important team.
Skehill, do you agree with this contention? Murph just said that it feels like Galway are a bit closer to Limerick this year. Henry Shefflin framed it in a slightly different way when he was asked on KCLR after the game last weekend. And what he said was he feels like we're in a better place than we were when we played Cork this time last year. So do you feel like Galway are that bit closer to Limerick this season than, say, getting ready for semi-final weekend last year?
Like, I would agree with what Murph was saying there, because there's a lot of similarities, like from last year to this year, because as you remember, like, we came through the Leinster Championship, didn't perform great in the Leinster final, lost that, then came into the Cork game. Probably was a poor game with Lauren hurlers, and we got through Cork, and I think a lot of people had backed Cork to beat us. And we came into a position where we were in a semi-final, playing Limerick, who I think were in a better position last year, I think, to be fair. And we put up a great performance. Like, so even that gives me confidence moving forward. And I do think there are a couple of steps, they're going down the road a bit more, but I think they're probably a few percent better than where they were this time last year. Maybe that's because they've got, like, new players got blooded in last year. The management is a continuation, same in their second year. And I don't think Limerick, as I said to you before, I don't think it's the case of Limerick regressing an awful lot. I just think the pack has closed the gap a good bit. And it's not quite as, it doesn't have the dominant feel that it had last year. In fairness, I know I was speaking in jest last year about, we're going to win this. And even on the roadshow prior, I said, yeah, definitely Galway. But in truth, like, I was hopeful, that or wishful as opposed to expectant. Whereas even now, this week, I'm kind of, I wouldn't say I'm wishful, but I'm expecting a good performance, and the result will take care of itself, because semi-finals are for winning, regardless of who's in front of you. So because it's Limerick, fair enough, yeah. But, like, Galway have to go and do what Galway do, and that's just play fast, play skill, play hard, and see where it takes you. And, like, I'm confident they will produce a performance, because they've shown evidence last week. And look, granted, it wasn't the best game, it wasn't the most free-flowing game we've seen in the Munster Championship, previous type of games. But I still saw enough from our guys to say that, yeah, we can mix, no problem here. And it's just, as I said, Murph, you're dead right. Semi-finals have a much different feel. I don't know, it's hard to actually verbalise what it is. It's hard to say. But every game has a different feel. Provincial Championship is different. Quarter-final, semi-final is like, right, this is the last step before we get to the final. And it's like, it's the biggest sigh of relief is like from semi-final to final. Do you know what I mean? If you get over the semi-final, it's a huge sigh of relief. So it has this kind of, it's like a nervous energy, Murph, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And in the first 5 minutes, you'll know how this game is going to go. I always feel that. I always feel in the first 5 or 6 minutes, you'll know the feel, right? We're in this is going to be a fight all day, or we're on it, or we're not on it, etc. And so it's very hard for me and personally to judge. Yeah, we're going to beat Limerick, but I know after the first couple of minutes if we're in it. Like same way Tipperary last week, I said, yeah, we're pretty good. That was from 30 seconds from the throw in when I saw the Joe Cooney fist bump from quite a quiet guy. So I'm hoping to see that twofold come this Saturday.
Murph, we've talked already last week, and this has been signposted a couple of weeks out, that Declan Hannon wasn't going to be available for the semi-final. We'll see what happens towards the final if Limerick were to qualify, but this week they've had to make plans. So far, in the last week, I've been told by people who apparently know and are in the know that at this stage, Kyle Hayes has been training at number 6. Will O'Donoghue has been training at number 6. Apparently, Dermot Burns has trained a bit at number 6. Morrisey has come out at number 6 at training. So there's either a million scouts in the bushes at Limerick training and they've all got wonderful info, or Kylie is trying out a million guys ahead of this. I have a feeling we won't know until probably before the teams line out, and maybe even after the teams have been named, who's actually going to drop in at number 6 for this weekend.
Yeah, no, like, I mean, anybody who thinks outside of the group within Limerick that you know what they're going to do on Saturday evening. Like, not to call you a fool, but you're a fool, because, I mean, to my knowledge, Clare or Limerick trains are behind closed doors, obviously, at the moment. And I always remember down through the years, you'd hear savage rumours and like off the wall stuff. And I know people might go, but it's not off the wall to say, you know, Kyle Hayes is at centre back or Will O'Donoghue is at centre back. It's not. But at the same time, if those things never happened, like there'd be Limerick lads going around, Limerick players going, who's making up this stuff? Because there's lads as well, I fully believe, that just throw stuff out there and see how far the rumour will go. But I wouldn't be surprised to see any of those.
So far this year, Murph, I've heard TJ Reid has left the Kilkenny panel. You get all this type of stuff. I think Gerard Hegarty's left the Limerick panel 4 times if it was based on DMs that you get during the year. Yeah,
absolutely. And sure, we had a whole week there in the run into one of the games. I can't remember, was it Watford game or whichever one it was? And Gerard Hegarty had left the panel. Like, this is obviously on a much smaller scale, but I'm keeping my mind open as to who's going to arrive at centre back, because like what Paul Connerk and what John Kiley think and how they view the game and how they view what they want to implement is completely different to me looking going who replaces Declan Hannon. Like, I might look at it from the point of view, say, who does as close to the job to Declan Hannon that will fit in there? Whereas that mightn't be what they're thinking. They might think, listen, we really want to have a springboard of an attack from centre back. We want to hit Galway with something they're not expecting and hit them hard. And then suddenly you see Kyle Hayes there, where I'm going, I expected to see Dermot Burns. So I think we won't know till about 10 minutes even into the game to who's actually going to go centre back, because you could have the example where Galway don't show their hand straight away from the throw and where the forwards go everywhere, because you know that Limerick are going to try and tie down Conor Whelan. So Conor Whelan might hang out around the centre forward spot. They might be all in a ball. We often did it with Tipperary years ago, where it was just a cluster of lads running around after each other and there was no shape to it, because no team wanted to show for 2 or 3 minutes, for the sake of 2 or 3 minutes, what you're going to do to cause a bit of confusion and maybe get an early goal. You know, maybe that's what you're going to do. So any of these rumours, I wouldn't buy into them too early, to be honest.
Just as a player who played primarily cornerback, I know you played a bit of wing back as well, and you're probably happy enough to go out and track a player or do a job on someone if Cody had said go follow someone. If there is that type of chaos, with the exception of, say, the year where Lark Corbett stuck on Tommy and walked around everywhere with him, but obviously people will move around, particularly in the early stages of the game. As a defence, how do you actually deal with that? If you're told, I'm detailed on player X, say, I don't know, you're meant to be following forward today, and next thing forward ends up out wing forward and you're not quite sure, Bonner Maher's dropped into the inside line. How as a defence do you make a decision then about who's going to pick up who?
Well, usually before a game, like, we would just say you pick up whoever. So you either have 2 plans, really. Pick up whoever, or there's lads who are going man-marking. There was times, I think, like, let's say 2012 in the semi-final against Tipperary, we all man-marked somebody. So everybody was man-marking someone for that game. But then for another time, you might play them. There might be only 2 lads man-marking. So, like, when we played them, it was actually the unusual thing, of Lar took up Tommy, and that was unusual. But then let's say you fast forward to 2014 final, and the first game, you know, Bonner Maher got a bit of traction coming through the middle, and I remember Mick Dempsey coming into me early saying, you go out, follow Bonner Maher everywhere. So you're like, grand, I'm going on Bonner. So if I turn up left half back, well, that's fine. That's my job. And then players know that anything can happen within this space, but, you know, Paul is going to be following Bonner Maher, and that's to say. So he's at full back, if he's at whatever, that's where he's going. So you'd have to communicate that before the game because it's chaos. Like the one thing a defense does not like is chaos. You want structure. You want to know what's happening. So before the game, generally you'd fire things to lads. And like actually, it's probably something I'll touch on in the dressing room when you're doing the tour. Is that you go over and you have a word with a fella. You might say to Tommy, like I used to go to Tommy, listen, Tommy, you go and compete, and I'll be right behind you if the ball breaks. And he knows I can go and compete, whatever. Or if he says, listen, Lara's going to drift into the corner, I'll follow him into the corner. You go out wing back. You've spoken about it. So when it happens, it doesn't knock you off your pace, like, or it doesn't confuse you, or it doesn't give you a bit of concern because you've spoken about it. So I would be saying that like Limerick or Galway in this instance, I'd say all 4 teams over the weekend, they'll have contingencies for everything. Like, so they'll be like, oh, if I go Conor Whelan, what if he goes out past the 65? Do I follow him? And the management will say yes or no. They'll say no. If he goes past the 65, leave him out there. He's not dangerous. You go back in. So all these conversations will be had in the run into this. And as many contingencies as possible will have been spoken about. The likelihood of what if Lynch turns up at centre forward, but Cathal O'Neill was there to start. Well, we need someone to go at Lynch. What if Limerick go with 2 players in the full forward line and it's Flanagan and Gillane? Well, someone go with Casey. But what if Casey and Gillane are there? Well, we need someone to stay with Flanagan as well. So like this is all the conversations players are having every night they meet up during the week. This is what they're speaking about because it just creates a foundation of belief and an understanding that in the chaos of the match, when you see something happening in front of you weren't expecting, there's a bit of calmness when it happens because you probably discussed it.
I think that's very interesting as well, Skehill, because last year I'm sure there were plenty of teams who were thinking, let's try and keep Adrian Mullen as far away from goal as we possibly can. And next thing he goes off on this withdrawn role and you're not quite sure if you should track him out to midfield. And then if you don't go out and track him, he can do what he did in the All-Ireland semi-final last year and pick off 5 points in play.
Yeah, but I think, let's say, you're talking about a special player, like say, who has that ability. Like his armour is huge. Like he can shoot from distance, he can cover ground. That man can tackle. He can play as an inside forward. So like he's got an awful lot of strings to his bow. And I think, let's say, from a defensive perspective, when you're talking about situations, it's either scenario based or it's personnel based. So like Murph said there, if you're told man mark that, let him go where he wants, that's personnel based. You're staying with him. And scenario based is like there's loads of different options. As I said, Murph. But Adrian Mullen, let's say, was kind of a good bet. By Cody last year, and he hedged his bets, and the bet was successful, and it was something that us probably in the media side of things and opposition players didn't expect, and it came to fruition for Kilkenny, and they got a lot of traction off that. And actually, would you believe it allowed? I know Adrian got a lot of points. He got an All-Star. He was really good in that role, but he actually fed a lot of people. He assisted. He was quite effective in the overall Kilkenny play. So it wasn't just him being isolated to a wing forward role, popping a couple of points. He was withdrawn. He was a huge puck-out outlet for Owen Murphy. I can picture 3 or 4 in my head from the Leinster final that were seriously effective. And like that was the benefit of having a chance to this and it coming off. So like there's things that might happen over the weekend where managers or each management team might look at it and say, right, let's try implement this situation or this scenario, and it might work. It might work. It might have to be abandoned after 5 minutes. I've been part of games and say whereby we would have talked about a scenario or a situation, tried to implement it early, didn't work, and you just have to abort. After 10 minutes and just go back to brass tacks or orthodox even. So that's a very a possible thing to happen this weekend. But that's the beauty of sport as well. As I know, we look at it for just 15 on 15, but like when you're into tactics like we are and into analysis and to see what kind of opposition management teams have implemented to try and break down the others, like it's really interesting from that perspective. So I am eagerly awaiting to see what Limerick are going to do, A, for the defensive setup, and B, for Conor Whelan. We spoke about last week. You'd imagine it'll be Mike Casey and the centre back role. I've come away from what I said, 2 weeks ago about the Jim Burns. I genuinely don't know. Like you said there, when there's 4 or 5 options, and like there's pros and cons to every option. And who knows, Connacht and Kylie's management team might turn around and say, right, we've actually got a different dimension to our game if we put in X player or Y player, or we can change things around. So I have no idea who's going to be centre back. I think if Daithí Burke, like for example, if he Touchwood went down straight away, I think the world knows it's Gareth McInerney, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or Joseph Cunha said, depending what other personality is available. But in this instance, I haven't got a clue. And look, that's the beauty of tactics, that's the beauty of sport, personnel. Here we are. It's given us little nuggets to talk about. Wouldn't it be awful boring if we didn't? So, yeah.
Oh, it surely would. And this is the thing, like Hannon has been such a mainstay since he's gone to six, and he's missed very little hurling while he's been there. So that's why this becomes an intriguing little kind of side narrative for the week. Paul, it was also one of the left field ones that we got on the Instagram questions. Paul G83 said this one. What about Reedy at 6 for Limerick? Great passer, could sit in well there. What do you think?
Yeah, like there's nothing off the table here, and particularly in the modern game, that a player who's comfortable on the ball in that situation and is able to carry it through congested areas. That's a really big trait of a player here. Like, I mean, Hannon has his size and, quite often has a physicality to just barge through those areas, like with momentum, whereas a smaller player, let's say like Reedy, you'd be kind of saying that, okay, he mightn't have Hannon's size, but he has, he's a great pair of hands on him. He's fast. He's a great sidestep. He'd be able to still maneuver through those areas. Like, another player that I wouldn't be overly surprised seeing would be the likes of Barry Nash, seeing him out centre back, because Barry Nash is a great player going forward. Like, it's remarkable to say about a cornerback, incredible player going forward, who potentially, let's say, Limerick might look at it and go, actually, we have, an embarrassment of riches here of fullbacks. Why don't we just embrace that? We know Mike Casey's going to mark Conor Whelan, let's say. We have Morrisey there. We'll have Morrisey, and then we'll bring in Richie English, who's an outstanding cornerback. Let's bring him in there. And you know what? Barry Nash being out at centre back, he could carry serious ball for us through the middle there. Going forward, he could pop up with 3 or 4 points. And the thing is as well, which I think, particularly at this time of the year and Limerick having the 4 weeks off, is that players will sometimes develop in training where you're going, actually, like, that player's really going well. How can we use them in our team? Maybe they're just not making our team over the last while, but now they're showing traits that it's nearly undeniable. You have to use them. So, like, the likes of Barry Nash might be popping up in training with 5 points. They're going, Jesus, lads, we have a corner back there who, well used to playing up in the forwards. Why don't we, deploy him a little bit further up the field, maybe at centre back? So there's a variety of options there. And I've seen them over the years, like Skehill when we played G in 2014 in Portlaoise, or not Portlaoise, in Tullamore. And we played G, we drew the game. The following week, Conor Fogarty had been going really well in training the whole time, but had been kind of in corner back, in wing back, not really getting the place. And the boys identified that we needed someone to disrupt Galway around the middle and just get involved and get flicks and blocks and has an engine that'll go for the 70 minutes. And they deployed Conor Fogarty there. And he hadn't been playing there really. And it was an inspired move, and he just took to it altogether. Mm-hmm. So I believe that, like, these 4 weeks off, particularly for Kilkenny and Limerick, who have had the 4 weeks, they may have seen 1 or 2 players in training putting their hand up going, they're showing, lads, and we have to almost reward them with a starting place. And also players who have been starting might be showing features that, do you know what, Kyle Hayes could be going, or William O'Donoghue could be going really well at centre back. Let's get him in there, lads. So I won't be surprised if, until I'm intrigued, and I'm looking forward to seeing what develops at that centre back role for Limerick and how they utilise the opportunity here, really.
Flip side to this, Skehill, who do you put in from a Galway perspective to maybe try and disrupt whoever ends up at centre half back for them?
That's a good question, and I was thinking about this because either it's going to be a ball player, a good player and an athlete, or B, I suppose a strength-based individual first. So, like, Keenan Fahy was 11 for Galway last week, and I thought he was in a different role because Ronan Maher had a tendency to sit off, let's say. So I can't see the Limerick lads sitting off too deep. But I'd like to see a player, a ball player, let's say, what do I call them, like a connector. So someone that's going to actually ask a question of the 6, because whoever plays the 6, albeit they might play there for the club, they might have done, let's say, underage, but when you put them out in an Ireland semi-final under intense pressure against an organised team, it's a different kettle of fish. Like, so I want to really ask that person questions. So I'm thinking, if you just go toe-to-toe, stand beside him and lump the ball down, doesn't quite ask the man questions. Some physical questions, yeah, but not really mental questions. Ask him to make decisions. Ask him to make calls. Ask him to put him in kind of no man's land. You know what I mean? Try draw him out. Try put him in. Just play with him a small bit. So I would like to see a bit of a player. And you might see Evan there. Like, Evan is a really good ball player, really strong for the size of him, and a shooter. So if we get a shooter out there, it might, hey, we have to push up here on these lads. So the big thing for me is that, and I know they will, like, the Galway management are clever people, and they will be looking at this situation in Limerick and saying, right, let's try and expose this, because you're looking for chinks in their armour, you're looking for weaknesses. And so when you're missing clientele, you have to fill gaps. Then naturally you're going to go for that weakness. You know what I mean? I remember, like, in the 12 SR Ireland final, Murph, when the replay, when Wally Walsh came in, we as a group had no idea who this guy was. Never heard of him, never seen him. I don't even know, did he play in the league that year? Maybe he did, but we didn't have a clue. And let's say we were, you were kind of, you weren't really a long ball team into your into your corner forwards, which means you'd often hit long ball on the ground. But literally, Wally Walsh comes in, long ball comes in, he asked serious questions of our defence, and it worked out wonders for you. Like, that was a really inspired move. So I'd say what Cody and his management team did back then is what Henry and his management team will be trying to do now. Look for avenues, look for areas that we can try and exploit. Because there's not a lot, lads, for Limerick. There's not a lot of avenues to exploit in their game plan. So you have to looking for the 1%ers and try and really hone in on that, because there's a couple of non-negotiables you'll have, work rate, attitude, all that jazz, right? That's what. But then what's the little extra nuggets we can do? Where can we ask serious questions? And I'm thinking 6. Try and ask 6. I can't see Will O'Donoghue going in there because he's too effective for the midfield. He's like he's like a huge, ball breaker out there. I don't mean that physically ball breaker. He's a good, you know what I mean? He's both. He's a good ball breaker for everyone.
Figuratively and realistically,
I saw a cartoon where he was up as the Terminator, and that possibly is a good explanation of him.
It was good, actually. I like the ingenuity of it. I thought it was quite good. And look at it, it's applicable. It's it's truthful, because he's so effective. Like, we've seen him demolish lads left, right, and centre in midfield there for the last number of years, and he's a key cog in the Limerick machine. So I can't see him taking them, coming out of that area. But yeah, so like, to answer your question, Will, I just throw a bolter and I horse in Evan Island and try and play him and get him to shoot.
You love a bolter, don't you?
I just can't get away from them. Like, I just like if it comes to him going, yeah, that could actually happen. Do you know what I mean? That could actually happen.
Now, as your management career goes further forward here, is this something you're likely to do when you're a manager? You sit there and go, do you know what? Throw him in.
Yeah.
Truthfully speaking, like, something come into my head, and that's why I need people around me to go, hey, lad, you're mad. You're dead. This maybe is not the best course of action here. Like my school principal, right, in national school, Michael Walsh, he used to say to me when I was 8 or 9 years of age, he said, Jesus Christ, James, will you think before you act? He used to say to me in national school. So, same way in management. Jesus, done. Maybe I shouldn't act too soon. But yeah, I'm liable to do something crazy. Like, even Murph, you were saying about lads going and training there. I was going to ask you a question. Have you ever had someone who, let's say, was in the forwards and next thing just bang, played in backs one day and became a back, or vice versa? Have you ever had anyone Kilkenny like where, Jesus, lad's good in the backs? Or, do you know what I mean?
Pádraig Walsh is probably the obvious one. Like, Pádraig was playing out and out really in the forwards. He, like, a lot of people would actually argue that Pádraig Walsh probably played himself out of an All-Star in 2014 because he played in so many positions that he wasn't your left half forward for the year, or he finished at right half back, but he played against Yee at midfield and he played at left half forward another day. But he was one of the ones whereby when he first came in, it was out and out, he was in the forwards, and then just kind of started arriving into the backs, and you're there going, why is he playing with the club there? I can't remember where Pádraig used to really play, like, but I always remember him in training. Certainly when he came in first, he was out and out forward. But then there was no savage bolters. It wasn't like Michael Breen going to full back or anything like that. It was very gradual, I would say. And there were, like, if you think of our teams over the years, granted we would have thrown in the odd Walter Walsh. Maybe you wouldn't have known the name and he'd start, but very few times would you have seen someone going from like left corner forward to playing Barry Richie Hogan, let's say, go and play in midfield, or something like that. So we used to keep it, I suppose, as the stereotype would go, we used to keep it fairly basic now, and that's probably well known about us. Like, but there was never any savage bolters there for lads, because at the same time, for periods there was a queue of lads for each position anyway, so. The bolters then were kind of like, you weren't short of someone in a position where you were looking to try and pigeonhole someone else into it,
When Skehill mentions as well, Paul, about the fact that Galway were very unaware about what Wally Walsh was going to do when he came in, were you guys very aware of what he would be able to do if he was given the chance?
Yeah, absolutely. We were, because like, if you look at a lot of players now, there's so many players that are 6'5", 6'6". I think Wally's 6'6", but back, there wasn't many players 6'6" around then, like, not to say that it sounds like it's years ago or anything, like, but it is a big trait at the moment. You could name 5 or 10 players fairly quickly now that are 6'5" at senior level at the moment. But I think it was the fact that we knew what he was capable of. We were all surprised, like, it was when they literally turned over the sheet on the board on the Friday night before the final, and we were going Walter Walsh, and nobody more so in the room was going Walter Walsh than Walter Walsh. He was going, Jesus, I wasn't expecting this. And I don't think they told him anything about it. Like, I don't even think they told him in the training that, listen, you're going to be starting wing forward on Johnny Cohen on Sunday. I don't even think he got that privilege. But we were surprised, and I think some of us were just going like, yeah, he's going well in training, absolutely. Loads of lads are going well. But the big thing for us was just like, how will he get on? Like, as in, how will he... This is his first start for Kilkenny, and it's going to be 82,000 people in an All-Ireland final replay. And on what at the time was like one of the form defenders in the country, Johnny Cohen.
I think Murph, sorry to interrupt you, Murph. I think I actually set up the events of what happened the following year, if you remember, in the replay. Cork and Clare. I think what Cody did with Walsh in 2012 was a reason that Clare put in Shane O'Donnell at full forward for the same. Let's have it, and look how he turned out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but it was remarkable. And I remember, I tell as a story, particularly the likes of Walter Walsh. I tell them the story just to saying that his first match was an All-Ireland final. He scored 1-3 and got man of the match and was taken off after 62 or 3 minutes. It's a remarkable story. But I've already said it previously as well. I know we're getting off topic now a small bit, but it is remarkable that the 2012, 13 and 14, all the lads who won the man of the match in the replay didn't play the first day, which is a remarkable thing. Walter Walsh, Shane O'Donnell, Kieran Joyce, none of them were playing the first day, which is a remarkable kind of achievement to have no draw in All-Ireland finals for about 50 years or 60 years. Yeah. So suddenly you have 3. And then obviously Shane O'Donnell etched himself into Clare history coming on in that one. But no, yeah, Walter's achievement was something else. And we didn't know, to bring it back to the question, we didn't know anything about it. It was an inspired one. And I think the beauty of it was the fact that he had so little time to think about it. We were training, 8:30 on a Friday night, or 9 o'clock, he gets notified. The news breaks all around Kilkenny. His parents are congratulating him. I'm sure his club are absolutely delighted. I think he was maybe one of the first Hurler Ross Burke men to play in an All-Ireland final. And the match is on top of you. It's Sunday. So you haven't time to think about it. And I think part of that, and maybe it was a very clever move out of the lads, out of Cody and Martin Fogarty and Mick Dempsey, that actually protected him from the week of being hounded. Where if they told him early on or if the word got out there, that maybe gave him the freedom just to go out and not think and just hurl. And as well, another point I'd say is that Johnny Cohen had marked a lot of lads where he was getting breaking balls and stuff, but now it was suddenly you're competing with a man in the air who's 6'6" and has a background playing Leinster rugby. That's how do you deal with that?
It's a very, very challenge.
I was laughing more when you were on about no time to think, etc. Do you know where I was the day before the first game in 2012?
Go on.
I was in the fucking bog, right? And I went down in the morning of the game, right, before the game, about 9 o'clock, and I filled an 11x7 trailer, right, with creels in it. And I said, you know what, I leave it there because the bridge coming out of the bog was a bit unstable. I said, I better leave it now. Yeah. This could go archers in me, right? And my uncle was home from America, and at about 4 o'clock he says, you know what, we'll go down and we'll fix the bridge. And I said, Martin, I have a big game tomorrow. I'm not going down there to fix that. But the devil, he convinced me. And we went down, right? This is the fucking Yanks again now. We went down, right, and with a bale of straw, right, a couple of lids of 4x2 and a couple of pallets, right, thinking we're going to fix a bridge with about 7 or 8 tons coming out over it. Now you know what happened, don't you?
Broke.
The bridge didn't fucking fix and the trailer toppled. Right? So I spent the evening trying to get this fucking trailer out.
That was for the 2012 final.
The night before, I fell into bed wrecked. Trying to get 11 o'clock at night trying to get the trailer out. And I had a good game the following day. And then this day he goes, now see what I did for you.
The ultimate distraction. You didn't spend all day Saturday walking around the house wondering what was going to happen the next day. You were too busy trying to get out of the bog.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah.
Blessing in disguise.
I wouldn't actually recommend it, to be honest now. I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah. Now, there was actually one. I remember Martin Fogarty, he was a good man to tell a story, in fairness. He told me one a good few years ago whereby it was before an All-Ireland final. I can't remember what it was. I think it could have been in 2014. But he went fishing the night before. He just said, he get out of the house now with just, thinking about the game all week. So on the Saturday evening, or whatever it was, went out the night before, sunny evening, and he brought sandwiches and a flask of tea with him. And he said he was sitting down by the river, and it was around the same time that the match would be on the following day. And he said he was sitting there looking, going, sitting beside a river, nice and quiet, nobody around, peace. And he was like, tomorrow it's going to be absolute mayhem at this time. We're going to be in the middle of it. So he said he took a picture of the fishing rod and the sandwiches, and he sent it on to Cody and said, go on without me tomorrow, lads. I'm in a far more peaceful spot here instead. But he was just saying, he had a moment to himself where he was like, Do you know, you'd swear there's nothing going on. I say tomorrow morning it's going to be absolute chaos, or tomorrow at this time it's going to be mayhem. Like, so I'd say you could actually probably do a very good story if you ask lads what they were doing the evening before, like genuinely the evening before All-Ireland finals or big matches. You'd have some queer stories to come out.
I actually think, Murph, I'm open to correction, and maybe some of the clear folk can tell me, but I think the morning of the replay in 2013, I think Pat Kelly, the goalie, actually crashed his car.
Cool.
Yeah. Now I'm open to correction, but I'm pretty certain he crashed his car on the way to the game, the final, and just had to leave it there, get neighbours or get whoever, and get to the game.
Oh, yeah.
I think it was the replay.
Yeah.
So hopefully someone might add a bit more.
That was his way of getting a sponsored card in once he won the final, I think it was.
Yeah.
I'm sure someone will correct it in the comment. Like, everyone remembers the story about them getting on the bus at Houston Station and Shane O'Donnell getting the nod that he was going to start, but that's maybe one that went under the radar slightly. I'm sure someone probably knows in the comments. One for you, Skehill, coming in from Malt6 from Instagram. With a big semi-final, surely Tom Morrisey would be in the running for Hurler of the Year. He's been consistently excellent.
Yeah, he's been consistent, and I think when we mentioned last week, we were saying that there's been no absolute standout national performer for Limerick at the minute. He's been good. Like, I'm not going to say, geez, like Tom Morrisey's a top class yoke, like, but I think if he does have a good semi final and pops up with like 4 or 5 points in play, he's in there for the running. Like, I think from this instance, I think Conor Whelan has to have a continuation of the form, which he's more than capable of, and then you'll see probably more separation this weekend, where we had like a list of, I think maybe we had 5 or 6 on Monday, I can't quite remember. We might get down to 3. Do you know what I mean? For after this weekend coming, but like that, I have no issue saying that he can put himself. I hope he doesn't, right? But he could certainly put himself into the bracket. As well as, come here, if the likes of Gillane has another good game, he had a really good Munster final. If he's another good game, he's in the bracket. Jimmy Burns, who could pop up if they have 2 good games to say in the final or semi-final. Who knows? You could see people dropping off the list and people coming onto the list. But from my perspective, I hope Conor Whelan keeps himself in front and shoves on a bit more.
There's a few other questions we can keep to a little bit later. I'm trying to think of ones that are relevant to this one. This isn't a question, but a comment from Tobar, who says Galway win by 6 points, up Turlock more. So he's very confident about this one. Where are you guys at this one? It's proper confidence. If Galway win by 6 points, I hope you have it backed, Galway to win by 6 points if that's the case. Murph, I have a feeling I know where Skell's going to go. I will ask him out of courtesy anyway. But how do you see this game going Saturday night?
I don't see a whole lot in it. Obviously, enough boring statement. But at the moment, all I can picture is kind of a draw veering towards Limerick winning by 2. Like, Limerick haven't set the world alight, but like Skell is just saying, like, I mean, let's say we go back to your interview after the Galway Tip match where you were in the stands afterwards, and like nothing has changed since then, where the situation still stands, where Limerick are still the top dogs in the country. So like, if I'm sitting here with any team now playing them this weekend, you'd be going Limerick by 2 at the moment. Like, they're still there to be toppled. But it's like I said, Galway have a huge chance here because they are closer to them than they were last year. They're coming in an ideal position, and there's no fear. Like, Galway won't be fearing Limerick. They won't be afraid to what happens if we don't perform. Or I genuinely believe they'll give this a savage crack. And where I think there's going to be big traction to be got for Galway. Last year, in about the last 15 minutes or so, Galway got huge traction, literally in the middle of the field, right in the centre. They ran right up through the middle there, and they got 2 or 3 points from that area. And when we're talking about the Limerick centre-back being up for contention here, there's potential there that you may have someone who will be a little bit out of position in that area. And I think Galway can get a little bit of traction there. If they get traction there, lads will step up to crowd out the middle area, and then you're creating the space inside again for the likes of Conor Whelan to potentially go and get a goal. So I think there's huge carrots here for Galway to go and actually win this game. And like, it'll be a big one. It'll be enormous for Galway to go and actually take a scalp off Limerick here. It's going to be, I feel it's going to be an absolutely savage game. Really looking forward to it. But like, at the moment, you'd have to just say that if I was a betting man, I'd just go Limerick by about 2.
Skell, are you as confident as Brendan is about a 6-point win here?
I'm not that confident, lads, to be honest. I wish I was. I think the margins are going to be quite tight. I'm hoping I'm obviously hoping we this is kind of head over heart kind of stuff. But I'm looking at and I'm saying, right, if we're going to win, what's going to produce a performance for us? And I think the key person, would you believe, on Saturday is actually going to be Aaron Murphy, the keeper. He's going to have the ball in his hand about 40 odd times. So now we've got 40 odd opportunities to create something. So like, there's no other person against Limerick gets the ball as much in their hands and they can control the game as much as the keeper in the opposition. So I think Ian is actually absolutely vital. Like, his striking has been really good this year. His general play has been okay, but like, he's striking. So that can be a platform for us. We need to find Brian Cannon, Cathal Mannion, Thomas, these guys into space, create opportunities, and that's going to start with Dana. If he can play well, deliver really good deliveries into our midfield and forwards, and hopefully pick off a few long-range points, get a goal or two. Very wishful thinking here, Look, it's going to be extremely tough, as I'm back in Galway all day. Like, I never go against them, simply because it's where I'm from. Likewise with you, Murph. If the whole of Ireland was playing Kilkenny, you go for Kilkenny.
This is it.
Yeah. But again, I will acknowledge it's an extremely tough ask, but there's no fear at all this side. It's just have at it, just shackles off. I'd love to see the guys just go and express themselves. Don't like restrict themselves through over tactical analysis. Just go at it. And if when Galway teams go at it and really just throw off the shackles, as I said, and go at it, we usually produce big performances. Will that constitute a win? Who knows? So time will tell. But I'm sticking with Galway by the minimum margins.
Yeah, I liked it. If we listen back to ourselves about 15 weeks ago, at that point we're saying Limerick have improved on last year. Teams are going to be really lucky to even be able to fight them. And now here we are with, genuinely a semi-final that could go either way. Mega Man 1, Skehill, don't forget 9 of Galway's wins are since 1987. This is on the YouTube comments last week. Tip have only got 6 in that period. So I don't want to reopen the wounds, but Mega Man was doing the numbers on the lads having 22 versus 9 ahead of the game last weekend in Tipperary's favour. This is a slightly different one from Nigel Redmond, 5355. Galway are the Tottenham Hotspur of hurling. So much potential over the years, but they'll always let you down when it matters most. They have no consistency whatsoever. Saying that, if they beat the champs, unlikely in brackets, I hope they win the Liam McCarthy. Anyone but the banner, coming in from Nigel Redmond. I wonder, is Nigel from Limerick?
Yeah,
that's a bit of a strong statement, though, isn't it?
Which?
That's what he said. That's a bit strong, though. Yeah, like... Yeah.
I'd never call anybody Spurs now. I wouldn't
like,
know them.
Spurs have won nothing, Spurs have won nothing as far as I can see. And it feels like...
Not since 2008.
I think over the last number of years, like, Galway have been successful-ish, you could think about. Now we haven't in a while, but it's like, there's still things that have been won, and like, in big games, like in our Ireland series, we've produced performances, so I'm not going to say we're like them. That's a bit low. Jesus, like, he was doing quite strong. 2-footed tackle there, didn't he?
He did a little bit. For accuracy's sake, I'll get this name right. It's at ML-JV4TD. Starting Fintan Burke to go on Hegarty is unnecessary. Very different situation to last year. Neither is going well. Garrod not operating as high a level as he was before, and Fintan's been struggling to start. That's off the back of one of your comments last week, Skehill. You were saying that you wouldn't bring him in as a specialist marker on Hegarty. You would stick with the system that worked the last day.
Yeah, like I think, like, the personnel who started the last day, not necessarily finished, but the personnel who started did a really, really good job and got us in front and got us into a situation whereby we should have been far more in front. So I would trust that personnel again. There's no reason for me to see where, okay, X, Y, Z person has to drop out of the team. I can't see it. And again, as I mentioned earlier, I'm a big believer in that. Like, don't shake up things too much just for something that you think might happen with the opposition. So, like, Fintan was obviously not selected the last day for reasons that only the management team know. Could be form, could be whatever. And I genuinely don't expect him to start the next day because I see no reason why we change the team. I don't want to change our team too much to again counteract Limerick. Go for it on our side. Put out the base 15 on form in the training pitch, and then go for it after that, and the rest will take care of itself.
A couple more comments on this game before we get to Clare and Kilkenny. Stockroom Tim, who's a Clare fan. Most impressive thing I saw at the doubleheader in Limerick was the New York under-17 panel that was introduced to the crowd. How were they able to put an under-17 team together? Fair play to them. And then the night after we did that YouTube video, the New York under-17s beat Clare minors in a challenge game in the football. So fair play to New York. That is a great achievement, and by all reports, like, they were very skillful as well on the field when they were doing that kind of, I guess, a bit of a demonstration on the pitch at halftime. And New York, over the last few years, they've won Division 2 of the girls' Fela, and they won Division 1 of the lads' Fela a few years back as well. And even their senior team has now got quite a few, how to put this, American-born players of Irish heritage who've been playing on their team, as opposed to the guys who go over to work over there. Yeah, natives, I suppose, is fair enough, yeah. So very, very impressive that they've got minors coming through of that kind of quality. And Abtrain 2010 is the last one before we move games. Regarding tips flatness, there has to be a reason why they were all flat. I refuse to believe it was anything fitness related. Sheedy mentioning overcooked and hard winter has to be nonsense. My guess is that the pressure and tension has been ratcheted up recently internally, perhaps by Cal, and it had a negative effect on the players. Players who previously played with freedom, confidence and energy were now tied up in negativity and fear. The carrot is better than the stick, in my opinion. So there you go. We'll be analysing what went wrong for Tipperary, I think, throughout the summer. It's going to be one of those questions, what went wrong in that. So that brings us around nicely to the Clare against Kilkenny game. And of course, there was a back and forth happening in the comments on the YouTube on the back of it. Connor Phelan, 7-2-42. Delighted to hear the majority of pundits are writing off Kilkenny. That's one Clare win over Kilkenny in championship history, and that's what it'll do for you. So that was Connor, kind of getting the momentum going. And then Tomás na Carraige said after that, let's be real, this this Clare team have not won a championship match in Croke Park in 10 years, and they've barely been there for many of those years. Kilkenny breezed past them in last year's semi-final, and Croke Park is the second home to Kilkenny, yet Clare are favourites. So Skehill, is it unfair that Clare are considered favourites going into this?
Look, we can use stats, analysis, history to kind of formulate our argument. And in fairness, like Clare have had a good summer so far, let's be honest. If you bar the Tipperary game at the very beginning of the championship, like they've been quite an effective team. They produced a very good performance against Dublin. It was clinical. It's what we expect of them, first of all. They seem to have a lot more energy. I just feel like they're in a bit of a better position than they were this time last year. But then you go back through it, and Kilkenny, Clare have only beaten Kilkenny once in championship hurling, going back as far as 1997. 26 years is a long time. And I think Kilkenny are on 5 in a row at the minute in terms of victories. And it's the thing about it is, right, all of us in the public outside of Kilkenny will have a perception of this game, how it's going to go ahead. But people in Kilkenny are just, I mean this in a nice way, they're just different. They have a really strong belief in what they're capable of. So what I think the Kilkenny boys, in my head, let's say, are feeling or would look and maybe speak about Clare could be totally different to what's down there. Do you know what I mean? They would have a huge belief in their own ability, their team, their people, and I'm 100% expecting them to go up and win on Sunday. But me, as a neutral and as a guy standing out, I'm looking at Clare going, they have a good team, a really effective team, and they're coming for, I don't like to use the word revenge, wrong word to use, but you know what, a lot went wrong for them last year. Their own doing, and Kilkenny's doing as well, and they're looking to right those wrongs, I think. And when we say write off is a bit strong. What we're trying to do here is point at a victor, and we're talking about a point. We're talking about potentially a draw. We're not talking about Kilkenny or Clare getting blown out by 7 or 8 points. That's not going to happen. In this instance, I can't see a repeat last year, to be honest, in terms of a 12-point victory. But I don't think I'm mad when I say Clare could win this game. But like that, Murph I'll pass the ball over to him, and he'll make a very good case for Kilkenny, as I'm sure, like he likes to do, regardless of who. so it's going to be a tough game to call. As I hope, from my perspective, I hope we see everyone on the pitch. I hope John Conlan's playing after he's knocked against Dublin. I'd love to see Adrian Mullen back, but chances are Murph, we're not going to see that with injury, what the serious injury has, or maybe you're keeping your cards close to your chest. You'll tell us in a second. and have two teams go at it. Referees are important too. I haven't heard. I don't know, referees assigned as yet. Have you heard anything?
I think it's tomorrow we'll find out that.
Tomorrow, because I meant to say last week, and it slipped my mind, that John Keane did a really, really good job in the Tip Galway game. I thought he let the game off, and it produced. It was an addition to the game. So whoever's refereeing on Sunday and Saturday, likely. I'm hoping that I hope we're not talking about them on Sunday or Monday, really, because that's.
Is John Keenan at this stage, Kel, the most beloved hurling ref around?
He is,
because all of us were so impressed last year, and then he obviously disappeared after the Munster final.
Murph, actually, I think you called him as your number one ref in the country at the moment, did you?
Yeah,
I think you did. Yeah,
you did that start of the year. Yeah,
I called Fergal Horgan, and then 4 days later he retires. Yeah. But you know what I mean. In fairness to him, he's a good mix. You see, because referees nowadays, and I've seen them in Galway Club hurling, where you get a referee, he lets everything go, and the control of the game gets lost. And next thing, things get a bit dirty and a bit heated, and then the whole feeling of the game gets a bit nasty, right? So you can't just say let it off, right? What John Keenan does, he has a good mixture of letting the play flow, calls frees and they're frees, but then it looks like he's a nice demeanour about him. It looks like he's interacting well with the players. He smiles a lot when he's refereeing, which is a great sign. It looks like he's approachable and you can speak to him. So I think he's put himself in a really good position to say that he's the best ref in the country, because he's got all the good attributes of a ref. For me, if you're approachable, knowledgeable, and that you can actually make tough calls in tough situations. You're a great ref. It's when you take out one or two of those things, that's when things just go awry. And there's nothing more frustrating to a team, let's say, when a ref is making bad calls after all the effort you've gone through in years throughout the year. So the last thing is, I said to you, we don't want to be here on Sunday and Monday talking about an incident or something missed, and talking about the referee assistants or TV, etc. We don't want that. We want the refs to be inconspicuous, out of the way, but call a fair game. And that's why John Keane is number one. And I say he has to get a game. Like, I'd be very surprised if he doesn't get the semi-final, only if they're holding for the final. If they're holding for the final...
I hope he's not booked for the games this coming weekend because he gets the final. But we shall see. It'd be quite I think redemption is a better word than revenge, by the way, but what Clare want to do. But I think it would be a great redemption story for Keenan after what happened last year after the Munster final, if he was to ref well this summer and then get the final afterwards. So we'll see what happens on that. To pick up that point, Murph, a lot of things brought up by Skehill there, but you're going to make the argument for why Kilkenny won't care about any of the talk during the week, and they're just going to be out there to try and do déjà vu from last year and go through to the final again.
Yeah, I don't think Kilkenny are too fussed. I don't think they'll be insulted that if the bookies have them down as not being the favourites and that Clare are the favourites. That'll suit them perfectly, and they'll be happy for that, But I think, to be honest, like something I thought during the week when I was hearing the people are saying that obviously Clare are favourites. I think, to be honest, going forward, as long as we have the Leinster and Munster Championship as they are, I think the two Leinster teams, regardless, let's say if two Leinster teams in the semi-finals, the Leinster champions are probably still always going to be considered marginally the underdog, because the team they're most likely going to be playing against will have come through a serious Munster championship, and people will always say that they've been tested that little bit harder, and they'll go, oh, but Kilkenny only played X, Y, and Z, or Galway only played X, Y, and Z, or whatever. And I think that's just something like, if I think this time next year when we're sitting here and let's say we have Galway in the semi-final as Leinster champions, or Kilkenny in semi-final as Leinster champions, or whoever, I think they're still going to face this thing of they're playing Tipperary, and Tipperary had a really good year and, got to a Munster final, let's say, and fell short. I think this is just going to be the narrative that teams have been tested that little bit harder. But for me with Kilkenny, like last year, because it was such a kind of a nullified match, there's nothing that you're looking back to last year to say that, either team learned a whole lot from it that they're going to take into this year, particularly not Clare. Like really, whatever it was that resulted in Clare performing the way they performed, Clare want to solve that and then obviously come and really get a good grip of this game. And there was nothing, if that game was more competitive, we'd be able to look at that and say, this is what Kilkenny done really well. Like obviously there's a few very small points, but you'd be able to poke stuff in it. But because Kilkenny and Clare haven't played a whole lot against each other in these matches of the last few years, it is a kind of an unknown quantity, and it is a kind of it's very intriguing that way to see how both sides go to match up. But Clare do have the forwards to go and hurt Kilkenny, absolutely. But Kilkenny's defence has also been really resilient. They've been very strong. They've tried quite a few players, and I think in trying those players, Kilkenny have the options now to go, okay, the half back line, for example, to start the Leinster final was really effective because it was a very big half back line and matched up really well with Galway. But in this instant, maybe that's not what we need. Maybe what we need here is we have to track the runners of Clare coming through the middle. So we need, maybe the likes of Richie Reid being reintroduced into that half back line, for example. Well, maybe that would actually be something that would be a bit more beneficial. So I think Kilkenny are actually in position to go and do that and then go do your man marking job or your two-man min marking job as well. With that then, like Adrian Mullen being gone, or is he gone? We don't know. Obviously we heard last time that he
You likely know a lot more than we do here. Go on.
I don't. And again, it goes back to something we would have said. It's a trust thing, because I do know so many lads in the Kilkenny panel. And no more so, if I'm speaking to any of them, I'd hate that any of them would think that in my capacity here, that if we couldn't just chat away, as in normally when you meet up, that you couldn't just chat away for the fear of something being said.
Is that a tricky one for you in the WhatsApp group, by the way? If you're there and next thing one of the lads goes, Jesus, I heard Mullins just had an operation. He's going to be all right. Looks like he's going to be back. And you're sitting there going, I know the Skehill's going to bring this up on the pod.
Which WhatsApp group now? Our WhatsApp group? Or
you must have a former player's WhatsApp group.
No?
Sure.
Well, there is one with I call them the Owl Lads. There's one there with Tommy.
How Owl Lads are we talking here?
No, the boys who are clipping about 40 there who'd still do a job for you, but no, their group does have a WhatsApp. But I put it this way: we don't have retired players of my generation where maybe because I'm the first one, maybe I need to set it up where when TJ and Richie Hogan and the lads start stepping aside, I start putting them into it. But you would be involved in groups then as well, and you'd hear like, oh, they're going away on a training weekend, or they're going wherever, and you just say nothing. Like, but you know, you'd meet up with lads, you'd meet Owen Murphy, or you'd meet Conor Fogarty lads, and you talk about, you know, how's your house going, or any holidays planned, or whatever. Because if I wasn't doing this, I'd probably ask them, what's the story? Is Adrian Mullen all right, or what's the crack? But I'd hate for me to do it, and then 3 days later, one of your other friends is talking about it, and I'm the one to blame. So it is a trust thing, like, you know, and at the same time, me knowing that doesn't make a difference. If I know that now today, let's say that Adrian Mullen's playing on Sunday, or that he's not playing, doesn't make a difference to me, as long as I'd rather not know, and he goes out fit and, you know, shoots the lights out, you know. So I know as much as he, genuinely. And to be honest, after Skehill and Aidan Hart's display in the Hogan stand, or the Crow Park Hotel, where they wouldn't tell me if Cathal Mannion was starting, absolutely no way would I be revealing that information here anyway. So that's the trade-off. Will, the listeners are losing here because you can't be showing your hand.
It's the same thing with like my clubmate, like, and really good friend who's at the house here earlier on, Jamie Joyce. Like, he's a coach for Galway, and like I'd be messing with him, asking him questions, but I would never expect him to say anything to me because I wouldn't like it. Like, you know, now he'd keep his cards close to his chest anyway, which I would do the same thing if I was in his position. But like, you just couldn't. Like, it's a huge trust thing. Like, if you went on, and even accidentally, I'd be very conscious of that, not saying anything accidentally, because, you know, you wouldn't know what way it'd actually be perceived in the group. And I'd hate to think, like I said, Murph, the group who were your friends, like people you play with, say, can't trust you anymore, and they nearly avoid you. You know what I mean? And you, to be fair, you would deserve it. If you said something that was, you know, shouldn't have been said, it was privy to the group, then you deserve it. You deserve not to be spoken to again, really.
Yeah. And like, a lot of lads would rather, like, because let's say a lot of the players this week now will go around. I know we're getting off topic, but players will be going around and people will be talking to them. So like, you know, you've Conor Whelan in buying a coffee in a shop on the day. His lad behind him in the queue is saying, well, you fit for the weekend, how do you go? You know, and lads are talking to him. So you're actually the breath of fresh air if you don't talk to him about it, where you just go, well, did you see, you know, blah, blah, the weekend? Did you see the rugby? Did you see whatever, like, you know, and just talk to him about something else. But it definitely is a big trust one. And that's something that, you know, you just, like, I remember years ago, I remember like people texting me before a game asking, is this player injured? Is that player injured? And because you're in the mindset of you're preparing for a match, you're like a briar, like, you know, and you kind of do have a siege mentality. And even though your normal person doesn't see that as being intrusive and doesn't see it as winding you up, I used to get really wound up when players, and I remember it when people would text me and they'd ask me questions they shouldn't ask me about, will this fella be starting? Is this fella injured or whatever? That used to really annoy me. So I would be even hypersensitive to that. To be saying to lads, like the most I'd say to any lads, I'd say, well, how's your body? Are you injury free, and how's training going? Are you enjoying it, grand? And then get off topic. That I've asked them about it, but I'm not asking to say, well, how's X, Y, and Z going in training? So I come into these things very blind, to be honest. So I am coming into this game not knowing, you know, who's fit, who's not fit, who's going well. So if Adrian Mullen starts, brilliant. I hope he does. But I won't know anything about it until we see the team on Sunday.
Yeah. Like, even last week I was chatting to a guy who'd be very friendly with a lot of the Mary I players, which just coincidentally is kind of the spine of the Limerick team. And I'm sure he was probably chatting to Declan Hannon at some point. Probably has a fair idea of who's playing at number 6. But I didn't want to ask him, because as much as I'd love to know exactly what they're doing, I would hate if that got out and he thought him telling me meant I told someone else, and it ends up getting out there. You could never trust me to have a conversation again if that's what's happened. I think let's let the teams, you know, do their tactical thing during the week, come into the weekend, and I can happily sit down, whether in Crow Park or at home, and watch the battles play out. Last thing we need is speculation during the week about what's happened with players. But like, the thing is, Skehill, injuries are fairly key going into this weekend. I mean, we spoke last week, and I appreciate the point that when it's double digits, it's not purely down to John Conlan. But if John Conlan is missing this coming Sunday afternoon, that's a big problem for Clare, isn't it?
Oh, jeez, that's a massive problem. Like, I think if you're looking at players on level of importance for Clare, Tony Kelly's obviously number 1 in my book. And then, to be honest, I know people are looking forwards, but John Conlan is pivotal to that defence. He's pivotal to that team. He's like their, what's the word I'd use, Will? He's like their general. Do you know what I mean? He's like the guy that say he's a different type of leader. Himself and Tony Kelly are 2 different types of leader. Tony is energy, scoring, kind of raising the crowd, whereas John Conlan is physical, ball winner. So they need him, like, and they need him to perform well. So injuries are crucial. Like, injuries have the potential to actually swing a game. So like, if you look at every panel doesn't have unlimited resources. Like, so if John Conlan does in fact drop out, for injury purposes. Remember now, Dave Mack didn't play last or 2 weeks ago or a week ago, should I say, because of an injury against Dublin. So if he's out, which I hope he's not, and then Cleary's out, that's 3 of your top 6 backs gone. That's an awful hole to fill. Number of holes. And I don't think there's any team in the country that can actually physically fill 3, 6, and 7 and still perform to the same level that they were doing previous. Like, that's not possible. So, like, you certainly hope that McInerney's back. You'd hope John Conlan is fit to go. Conor Cleary, I still stand by it, Les. I still can't see it happening. Like, we played Kilkenny in that Federmore tournament yesterday, and that's his club. I didn't ask anyone in Kilkenny because, again, it's not fair of me to ask them, is he going to play? But again, I see it very difficult for him to come back from no shoulder injury. So you'd imagine he's out, and I'm hopeful Conlan will come back. I'd say it's probably just a heavy knock that he took and with precaution when you consider where the game was going. So the Dublin game. So yeah, hopefully he's back, and I hope Mullen's back. I want to see both teams stacked, ready to rock, give a good performance.
Just adding up the goals here, Murph. So Clare have played 5 games. They've conceded 13 goals.
Have they?
Okay, 5 of them came against Tipperary. But is that a big concern for Clare, given that Kilkenny will happily hop in some long ball into that full back line?
Yeah, of course it's going to have to be a concern. I mean, it's going to be a concern until you've shown yourself that you've rectified any problem that's in the full back line, particularly when you look at Kilkenny against Galway, that, when they got 4 goals, and, you look at Mossy Keown's goal where he kind of ran at the defence and calmly just flicked the ball past the keeper. You look at, then they have the option of where Walter Welch went steamrolling through the middle. Then you have the likes of, cornerbacks coming up, won't mention his name, coming up and getting straight through scoring. So like that the threats were coming from a variety of situations. You're not marking that, are you? I didn't say the name, sure.
just getting ready.
How do you do that now?
It's a loophole. It's a loophole.
You're even reading my body language now, sir.
Sure, you were there. You were looking off like terrier looking into a field of hisses there, and then suddenly you heard something go corner back, and you sprung into action, pen clicking away. I knew full well you're hypersensitive to it. But yeah, anyway, Will, back to your question.
Go on.
Like the fact that there was such a variety of Kilkenny scoring the different types of goals. Certainly, Clare, you'd have to be worried about it until you've shown yourself that, oh yeah, we've rectified this situation, because there's no point in shooting the lights out the other end if you work really hard to get 3 really well worked points, but then you give away a simple goal at the back. And simple goals happen every so often, but 13, I'm sure Clare would much rather, if they held it down to even single digits there, kept it down to 9, you'd feel a bit more comfortable with that. So certainly, look, Kilkenny they've shown that they've managed to get their shooting boots on, and that they're managing to get goals. So it's certainly, like, I mean, it's probably too easy to say that obviously, goals will be important here. But if Kilkenny figure out that they're able to root out 2 or 3 goals here, like, that's huge. And if it might breed a small bit of uncertainty into that Clare full back line, if Cleary isn't there and you have someone standing in the full back line and then you get a goal early on or 2 goals early on, like, that could decide the belief of the Clare backs very early on. So I think it'll be very important for Clare to set up in such a way whereby, granted, Kilkenny will get their scores, but if they keep the goal threat to a minimum, they'll be very happy, and it'll be a big step forward for them.
Now, in fairness to Clare on this one, I'm sure as will be pointed out by their supporters as well, it was the first few games where the goals were the real problem. So 5 against Tip, 2 even though they beat Limerick that night in the second round of games, then they conceded 3 against Cork. So they had 10 gone in their first few games. Did keep a clean sheet against Waterford. You could argue that against Dublin, they scored enough for the 2 goals not to really matter. And they were right in the final where they only conceded 1 in the Munster final. So the argument is definitely there. They've cleaned it up. But I suppose the point I was trying to make, Skehill, is that they have shown themselves to be susceptible to giving away goal chances at times. And this is a Kilkenny team that have had plenty of goals about them this year.
Yeah, huge. But like Kilkenny, Murph he took the words out of my mouth. I was going to actually approach there later on with regards to the variety and the manner in which Kilkenny get their goals. It's not a one-trick thing whereby it's just long ball hoping for a lucky draw. Like, it's attacking from flanks, it's up the middle, it's different clientele. It's numerous goals. So like they have the firepower and they have the legs to come through both from the half forward line and full forward line to get goals. And that's something that's going to be very, very, I suppose, important for Clare to stop. And like they did, in fairness to Clare, I think a lot of it has to do with the positioning of their half back line midfield. They seem to have tinkered with not with the personnel, but with the system there. That John Conlan was wants to sit back a bit more and provide more protection, which is like a primary duty of a centre back is to protect the guys behind you. It seems like that Fitzgerald, Taylor, they've got a good I suppose rapport over the last number of days, that number of games whereby they've stemmed the tide a small bit. And you're right about the Dublin game. In fairness, that type of game is the type of game whereby you've scored so much that if you concede a goal, it's nearly a token goal. I don't mean that in a disrespectful manner, but it wasn't a goal conceded at a critical moment whereby you got opened up when you're only a couple of points ahead. So they have cleaned up the act a good bit, and I think a lot of it, as I said to you, is down to 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's going to be a crucial one. Like Clare have got to win. A big thing for me here is the breaks. So like Kilkenny are a really good team. They're a really, really good team of feeding off breaks. So like a lot of their ball will go long. A lot of them will be. So the Clare half-back line are going to be tested. It's going to be an awful lot of ball hitting down to them. You could see in the region of 25, 30, if not puckouts landing down top of them. And it's the manner in which Clare can tidy up breaks, because Kilkenny will come through runners. And they've athleticism. I don't think we give enough credit to Kilkenny in terms of athletics. Like, they have got really good runners and powerful runners, which are hard to stop when they're coming at you. Like, this final was the first chance I got to see, the most recent chance I got to see of the Kilkenny boys up close. And they're fucking units. Like, they're units. Like, you know, if you go through all of them, let's say Wally, Keown, TJ, Cody, these boys are well-built animals. And the same thing, head out the way, Buckley, damn him, the way he did, like, you know, well-built athletics, like, so they can match Clare athletically, and hurling-wise in, which we know what Kilkenny can produce. So the key battle for me is Clare's half-back line versus Kilkenny's half-forward line. If Clare can get on top there, I think they'll win the game. If they can't, they're in a spot of bother. I like that now, the marking job. Our friend Mikey Butler, a friend of the pod, we call him. Yeah, I want to speak to this man someday. We want to get him on, right? I bet she's pure sound too. A lot will see what can he do. I presume he'll take up the role again of Mark and Tony Kelly. He was so effective in that role last year. So, like, if he can go 2 for 2, Mark and Tony Kelly, all credit to the man. That'll go an awful long way for leading Kilkenny's victory. So time will tell.
If you're a Clare scale, do you move TK away from him?
It's very hard to move a man marker. What you can do, it's a bit like when you play a sweeper. Like, you want to not have the sweeper sweeping, you want it to be somebody else. You know, because the team who puts in the sweeper want that guy sweeping. So you want to put them in a situation whereby some other lad is sweeping, and it kind of knocks them out of kilter a bit. Whereas in this instance, right, you're just telling Mikey Butler, I presume, just follow that guy wherever he goes. And so Mikey Butler is comfortable, which you've seen, unfortunately, comfortable up in the forwards. You know, he's calm and collected, and he's comfortable in the backs, obviously. So I can see him just going everywhere. And I think Tony Kelly has to get away from Mikey Butler, where Mikey Butler just has to disrupt Tony Kelly. If Mikey Butler doesn't play the ball, you know, if he just keeps the ball out of Tony Kelly's hands, keeps with him, keeps blocking him, hooking him, keeps shoving him, like that's 9/10 of Mikey Butler's job. If Tony Kelly has to get the ball, he's to do something with it. He has to make the ball talk, and that's a harder ask for me. Like, I think we don't give enough credit to the guys when they are man marked if they produce a good performance. Like, so if we see Tony Kelly man marked now on Sunday and he produces a good performance, that deserves huge credit. Whereas in Mikey Butler, great job to mark Tony Kelly because he's so athletic, but it's a tough ask. I think Mikey Butler well capable of doing it, and I can't see a world where he doesn't do it. He has to go with them, and I can't see it in a world whereby Clare develop a plan that they get Mikey Butler off Tony Kelly. Just can't see it.
Is there a possibility, Murph, that Clare go, fine, let Tony be followed by Mikey Butler for the entire game, and we'll back our other 5 forwards to do the damage?
Yeah, absolutely. I think they kind of have to do something along those lines anyway, because, like, he will follow him, you know, probably up into the defence and everything if needs be, because we saw Martin Cahill-Mannion last year, and obviously has been given the license to go up as far as the opposition D if needs be. If you find yourself up there, you don't have to find yourself in cornerback the whole time. So I think in that, Brian Lohan just throws a gauntlet down to lads, say, look, Tony is going to try and find his way into this game, and he may find it after 2 minutes. Like, it may be completely different to last year. It may take him, you know, till half-time, come out after half-time, game opens up a small bit, and now he finds himself into the game. But that only happens if the other forwards fire as well, whereby there's enough danger around the pitch that Kilkenny are so preoccupied, men marking, and also then trying to, I suppose, join up as a unit in defence, that there's so many problems happening that, you know, they can't even double team Tony Kelly or anything like that, and that just generally the game opens up. I think Brian Lohan has to just go with that, really, because, look, again, there's so many unknowns, like we said about last year, that this game could take on a completely different life, and Tony Kelly could shoot the lights out here at the weekend, very capable of it, and you just always have to go with that he's one of these players that could just completely go out and last year is consigned to the ashes, and he goes out and scores 110 or something. It can just happen. But I think failing that, Brian Lohan just has to say to lads, listen, it's on you're well capable of it. It's back on ye to actually go out and hurl and put in a performance here, as I'm sure you want to do and you have plans to do anyway. But to bring Tony into the game, that's what everyone else has to do. They have to go out and win their own position, and that will facilitate Tony. And it mightn't even matter then. If Tony Kelly scores 2 points on play, but Clare win, but they won't care who's after scoring. They won't care how Tony Kelly's after getting on. It's just, they've won. So I think there's a few other things that they'll be more concerned about, more so in particular, just getting a performance that was completely, the opposite of last year. That's Clare's big concern at the moment. That's what they're focused on. And secondary then to that is, how will Tony Kelly and these lads get on? And you won't know that until the ball is thrown in on Sunday anyway. So they can control the controllables at the moment, put pressure on the boys to go out there and hurl well and get the distraction off Tony and allow him to come into the game. And that's all you can really do before now on Sunday.
Yeah, I think that covers off Cody96's question on Instagram. Will Mikey Butler do as good a job on Tony this year? This is one for you, Skehill, because I know you're a big fan of his. Luke Howard, not Luke Howard 2009, you're probably indifferent to him, but the player who you're a fan of is Owen Cody. And he asks, who will Clare use on Owen Cody?
Oh, yeah, see, Owen Cody's a tricky one because what Kilkenny are doing well at the moment is they're isolating him into a corner. It's not so much a corner, but he seems to have a big section of... If I was to divide the forwards into 4 quadrants, it really seems like Owen Cody has a full quadrant by himself because he's got pace, power, and skill. So when you mix those 3 together, you've got a dangerous animal in there. So what they tried to do against Galway, for example, was they tried to isolate him against Pádraig Mannion and feed the ball into him. And there's only so much defenders can do in that situation. Paul will tell you, I always say it you can mark space, the man. It's very hard to mark both because if you're marking a lad in tons of space and he's getting ball, what can you do? What can you reality do? He's going to get points off you. You need, if that's the case, then you need help. You need lads to come back, and if Cody does get the ball ahead, you need 2s and 3s on top of him. So my point being is that I think Kilkenny will try and again isolate that quadrant for Owen Cody. They'll probably push. I'd imagine Rory Hayes will probably go on him. I can't see Adam Hogan on him just yet. Rory Hayes going on, and I'd say probably Lohan would say to the boys, we need to get our half-back line in a straight line across the pitch and try and cut off some of the ball going over their heads to Owen Cody. Because if you follow out the Kilkenny half-forward line who like to come deep anyways to collect the ball, if you follow them way out and go toe-to-toe, you are going to get murdered inside. And I'm not trying to be sensationalist, but you are going to get murdered when you've got Owen Cody who can contest low and high. His touch is unreal. I'm a huge fan of his now. And if the ball is hinting high himself, Mossy Keown, there's a strong chance there's a goal on here. So Clare's defensive structure is key to that. If you stop Owen Cody, you're not stopping Kilkenny, but you're stopping a major cog in their system. And I think Rory Hayes will be step 1, who's a good marker, get him to mark first, and then situating their half-back line is key for that number 2.
I don't know whether Mossy's going to be fit. Again, this is one of the suggestions that Mikey Carey's definitely out, and that it's going to be a case of Mossy's touch and go. It's his hamstring, it seems, Paul. So obviously the month may well have helped. Having these 3 free weekends to maybe nurse his way back in. Maybe he'll be fine to go this weekend. Yeah,
very possible. And it seems to be kind of a bit of a strain of a hamstring. In terms of, he had the hamstring injury going into the Leinster final from what we knew of. He had it after the Wexford match. But then still hurled really well for 20 minutes in the Leinster final. So it wasn't the case that it was a drastic tear of the hamstring from what I can see. So I would be saying certainly the 4 weeks off, given the knowledge of hamstring injuries at the moment and what you can do in that time to strengthen it up, I would be saying that hopefully he's in a very good position. And 4 weeks is a great amount of time. If you had a fairly significant tear, 4 weeks does a huge amount for that. So for me, if Mossy hurled for 20 minutes or so in that game in Leinster final, and you could see the medical team went into him and he said, yeah, listen, you may take me off there in the next minute or two, and hurled on for a bit, that is not a drastic hamstring tear. That it seems to be just, it's tight. I can't really do a whole lot with it. So I'd be encouraged, and hopefully he will, because he's a great goal threat. And again, no more than what Skehill was saying there, Mossy Keown is one of the lads for me. He was always physically really strong. But for anybody who's at the game on Sunday, if you see him in the warm-up, he is a block of a fella. He's really, really strong. And having a player like that who can physically, when he gets the ball in his hand, you think you're going to manhandle him when he actually manhandle you, but has the strength to basically pop the ball off then, that he's not getting pushed around. That's a huge attribute to have, and making the ball stick in there. He's doing a great job at that, and he's really developed as a player. So I'd love to see Mossy being fit this weekend and seeing him start, because it's actually very hard at the moment. To himself and Owen Cody, two of them are very similar when they're on the pitch in terms of their style of hurling, in terms of their physicality, and even the gait of them when they're running. They're very similar. So having both of them in there, two very similar players, I think they work off each other really well, and it allows then for you to throw in maybe another player of different attributes beside him, like your Billy Ryan, who's a speed merchant and deft little touches and stuff. So for Mossy to be played, I'd be hopeful. I think he will. But again, I think even until Sunday morning, you won't know until he actually walks out on the pitch.
Okay, we'll get into predictions in a moment, but just a few others that have come in. Electric Dinny has been in contact. He says, after listening to last week's pod, lads, you owe Tom Morrisey and Gillane an apology for not having them in your top 5.
Do we? Well, hang on for a second. Top 5.
Gillane was very much in contention in the chat, wasn't he?
Well, what does Skehill just name 5 players as a point of kind of, if we were to name something now, generally, we didn't actually name our 5 players.
It was potential. The word being potential at the minute.
And I think what we were saying, it was in the line of the conversation of that no one has necessarily overly stood out as hurler of the year yet. That was more the context. So it was for the point of that. Absolutely. Tom Morrisey could go and win the hurler of the year, so could Gillane. But the purpose of that conversation was more so to highlight the fact that other years we have said, this player, on barring them having an absolute calamity, is going to be hurler of the year nearly at this stage, and as long as they stay hurling well. So I don't think that we ruled out Tom Morrisey from the top 5 hurlers at the moment, have we?
No,
the notebook's there.
If fairness will, let's say I have Gillane written here, but I've by one, which in my own notes terms, he's had one really, really effective game that can be, I suppose, hurler of the year, applicable. That was the most refined. He didn't really set the world alight. Now, he was good. I'm not saying he was bad. I mean, he was good. But, for you to be nominated for Hurler of the Year, you've got to really separate yourself from the pack. And, when you see senior county teams nowadays, an awful lot of the lads are producing savage performances across the board. So, for you to push your head above the parapet, tricky proposition. And, in fairness to Conor Whelan, from one guy, he's done that over the last 2 days. He's really got 2 man-of-the-match performances in a row and been really effective. And like that, we did say last week that if they have a good semi-final for Limerick, Tom Morrisey, Gillane, could be somebody else that could get added to that list. But no, we didn't isolate those 5. We just mentioned 5 potentials, the guys who are currently looking pretty good. But I hope Gillane's on it after next week. Show my colours. Sorry.
Bob Noonan asking us to name a starting 15 that will start for Limerick. We kind of already touched on that a little bit. Do we think Cian Lynch is going to start? I guess, Murph, that depends on how fit Cian Lynch is, doesn't it? Yeah,
that's all it is. If he's fit, he'll start, really. We don't know. It's not a case that Cian Lynch's form has dipped significantly that you don't play him. It's just a case, is he fit? Yeah, he starts. If he's not fit, no, he's not starting. So it's not even up to us. It's Cian Lynch's body will decide whether he starts or not.
Mm-hmm. Okay, keep your predictions at the back of your mind there for a moment. Nihilist 13, Galway will beat Limerick, Kilkenny will beat Clare, from a Clare fan.
Oh, be good.
So there you go.
I'll check that.
That's a concerned Clare fan ahead of this weekend. Hugh Devery. You can have this one, Skehill, because I think you've brought this up before as well. Do you think our strikes on goal make it easier for keepers to stop them, bounce them? So I'm not sure which county Hugh is from, but I know you've talked about this before, the idea that players seem to want to put the ball at a height that's actually convenient for a goalkeeper, as opposed to if the ball is bouncing in front of them, it gets quite tricky. Yeah,
I actually asked one of our forwards recently, what goes through your head, I said, when you're going through on goal? I can imagine there's a multitude of things, and there's probably a degree of nervousness too, but what goes through your head in goal when you're about to shoot and you hit a lovely height for a keeper? And he goes, lad, he said, there's lads hounding you, there's lads coming at you. He said, I just want to get the ball on fucking target. That's all I want to do, right? In fairness, I can see it, right? Here we are, because we're so perfect, saying, you should have bounced that ball easily. But, if you look at, even if I go back to the Conor Whelan chances the last year, his third one that Shelley saved with his foot, if that ball gets bounced, it probably goes in. It probably does go in and stay. But it's just much more effective. I think if you took 10 shots and hit them at that height, mid-height, on an English county goalie senior, 10 of them, he'll probably save 8 of them. If you take 10 shots and bounce them, your efficiency will come up. Like he might still save 4 or 5, but your efficiency. So like the opportunities are few and far between. So when you get them, you have to take them. And the best way to take them for a goal is to bounce it.
I always thought, particularly for penalties, Gal, not to get on a tangent on this, but remember when the 1-on-1 penalty initially came in? And like I think the goalkeeper saving rate is generally pretty decent, but when players were good at actually bouncing it before the goal, goalkeepers generally didn't get near them.
Very hard because who did I face now? It was TJ. It was actually TJ and Aaron Gillane the one year I faced in a league and a championship, and both of them went down to my right. Both of them are left strikers, so both of them went kind of across their body, if you know what I mean. Naturally, you'd say, or if they went to open their body, naturally you'd say they go across their body, which would have been to my left. You know what I mean? But they both went to my right, and they bounced them. Now, the area which you bounced is key, so they bounced them what felt like 5 or 6 yards out from the goal. I had no chance. You can't do it because you can't actually judge the height of the ball is going to come. Do you know what I mean? You can't judge it at all. So you can't judge it. You're hoping it hits your heart. And they were the best penalties. So if you're bouncing the ball and you're bouncing, let's say, as I said to you, 5 yards away, it's very hard to stop that. Your efficiency again goes way up.
Yeah, especially if it's hit a pace, you just never know how that bounce is actually going to work out. Okay, I think that covers that one off. Cahill Mac 79. Who would you have for a young hurler of the year so far? Hogan and Rogers must be up there. # up the banner.
Young hurler of the year. So that's actually out to 22 years of age now, isn't it? It's not 21.
I think so,
yeah. Like Rogers again, young hurler of the year. I was just trying to think. It's not a standout year again for young hurler of the year. That sounds like you're being very negative about it. But again, let's say the years where like Austin Gleeson won it, like he was quite obviously far and above everyone. So it's quite balanced at the moment. Yeah, I suppose Rogers. What age is Rogers?
I'll check while Skehill has a think. Go on.
I'm thinking, Will. I'm thinking hard.
Yeah.
I'm trying to buy you some time here.
Again, like usually when I think back to Owen Cody's time, or when they were coming on the scene as young hurlers, like they put their hand well up and put it up high. Like Rogers in the bracket, definitely. Like
Rogers, by the way, he was born in 2001, so he can be no older than 22 right now. So
okay,
yeah.
So like, I think, to be honest, I think he's ahead of Hogan in that stake. But I'm just going through the teams. I'm naming the teams in my head, and I'm saying Galway. I don't have anyone. Kilkenny. I don't have anyone. Cork. Like, jeez, no, like
Cahill O'Neill.
I haven't anyone major.
Why is Cahill O'Neill?
He would have been under 20 last year, so he has
to be like. I mean, he was going really well. Bar when he got the injury, then like he was taken off against Cork, I think it was. When he picked up the injury, like Cahill O'Neill has really stepped up a fair bit. And like we said, we have two games left now where if he hurls really well, he'd probably get it. Because he's built on his last few years, and he does look like a player that's about to blossom really now into a savage hurler. And barring that injury he got against Cork, he was going really well. So, like, as it applies the same, I suppose, theory here to like the hurler of the year. We're saying that we'll know a lot more after this weekend, and these last 2 games will really obviously decide it. Particularly for young hurler of the year now is a chance for the likes of Cahill O'Neill to go out, and if he performs really well, like there's not many coming behind him. And Rogers is probably between the two of them really at the moment.
Yeah, so Adam Hogan is a 2003 baby. Their exact dates of birth aren't on the GA website, but he was born in 2003. Cahill was the year before, so he's 2002, and Rogers was 2001. So they're all 22 or younger. So all 3 of them are eligible to be named Young Hurler of the Year. Interesting. It makes me think of Billy Drennan as well, Murph. He never really got the run because of the injury, did he?
No, he didn't. And Kilkenny were kind of up and going then when, by the time he came back. But he came in. Did he come in the Leinster final? Was it? Was he just warming up?
He was on the panel for it.
He was on the panel. I think they were actually warming him up, maybe, or I can't remember if he came on. But no, he didn't really get. He didn't really get, I suppose, a look in after the injury, which was unfortunate. But again, he is young. Like, it may have been the motive of Derek that Derek maybe didn't see him fitting right into the team yet, albeit that he played, was a focal point for Kilkenny's league campaign. But you'd have to say, obviously, the injury would have hampered him. Like, I mean, he would have missed so much of training sessions, games within sessions that would have dictated who was starting and who's not starting. So it's unfortunate for him, because realistically, like, if he nailed down a position, you'd probably be saying Billy Drennan at the moment. If imagining he had a decent enough year, like, without maybe even going for an All-Star, that he would probably get Young Hurler of the Year. So unfortunate for Billy Drennan, yeah, absolutely. But again, look, a man with more days ahead of him than he does behind him at the moment. So it's bright for him anyway.
No, for sure. This is where, Skehill, we get into the territory where people go, ask them for a prediction, because I want to be able to use this against them if they're wrong. How are you calling Sunday's match between Clare and Kilkenny?
Oh. What are you looking at his notebook for?
He has either Clare or Kilkenny written down in the notebook.
Yeah, he needs to reference it just so. Yeah, go on.
I'm going to say Clare. I'm going to say that actually the cumulative margin of win over the weekend for the two games will be less than 3 points. So I'm going to say there's going to be only a point in both games or two. That's as tight as it's going to be, and I'm going to probably just throw my weight behind Clare.
Why so?
I like. There's a couple of things I look at in sports when a team is going well, and I just like a huge thing is momentum. And I know they didn't win the Munster Championship. I get that, right? But they've been performing to a level that would warrant a Munster Championship, would warrant in Ireland. So, and I think they're a team that probably has improved. I think the Dublin game was just the right type of game they wanted at the right time, and they just seem to be in a good spot. It's very hard to actually put my finger on it. Will I have this feeling about them. They just seem like they've loads of energy. They're into year 4 or 5 of the management team. The players are on form. Their big players are on form. They've got a couple of guys who can come in now to the forwards. They seem to have fixed a few of the goal situation at the back. Then obviously I put weight behind what happened last year. They want to get that. Revenge is the wrong word, but there won't be lacking motivation in any way, shape or form. And hopefully they'll have all their clientele to pick from, apart from Peary in my head. So like, they're just ticking the boxes for me. But like that, it's not me throwing shade at Kilkenny by no means, that because there's loads of boxes Kilkenny tick also. But I'm just throwing behind Clare. And like, I could toss the coin tomorrow and pick Kilkenny. Do you know what I mean? It's just Clare for me. I just have this. It's just a feeling about them. It's hard to explain, but I just feel that they're in a good spot and that they'll do on Sunday.
I was so close to having an attention-grabbing headline there for the pod this week. Skehill believes in Clare, or Skehill backs Clare. Yeah, you kind of went back on yourself slightly after that and went, well, Kilkenny are a very good team too.
Listen, there's enough fucking headlines that I've been making over the last couple of weeks. Right? I don't want no more. All I want is peace and quiet. Okay, just a bit of peace and quiet.
Yeah. I felt terrible that you didn't watch enough Simpsons to actually get the joke in this one. I was showing the lads before we came on. I ended up getting in a conversation about Skehill's hands because of his very impressive carrying of both pints and bottles of water at our roadshow in Limerick last year. And this is what the digital team, Keen Fahy particularly, came up with. And for anyone who knows The Simpsons, they will definitely get that, where the guy with the massive hand, after it went into the nuclear reactor, talks about his massive hand. Unfortunately, Skehill, you weren't familiar with that episode of The Simpsons.
I wasn't, and again, more than my father Ted, crimes committed against television. Simpsons is another one. I might have said, come here, I have a bone to pick with you, right? Every time he put up a graphic of the three of it, or of me, why do you always make me look drunk?
Invariably, you probably are, Skehill. That's
phone. Look at the head of me, like.
I think that may well have come from match footage, by the way. So I hope you were not drunk in that situation.
No, that wouldn't be drunk there, right? But like if you opened up that photograph, right, and put the rest of my body leaning against a door in a pub, it wouldn't. Yeah, it looked like I'm drunk.
Fair point.
Jesus.
I think it was wonderful work by our digital department to come up with that. One of their best pieces of work of last week. Murph, there's no more killing time for you. Who's going to win?
Well, look, I believe Kilkenny are going to win. Again, might be... Actually, no, I think it is head and heart in sync. Like last year, he absolutely went off on me for saying that Kilkenny were going to win. And maybe I could have been criticised for maybe leaning a bit towards my heart than my head. But I did believe it last year. But like again, this year, like I think there's a few things that Kilkenny will look to do. Obviously, we've talked about nullifying Tony Kelly, hopefully nullifying Shane O'Donnell. But I don't know if they'll go to man marking job for Shane O'Donnell. I think David Fitzgerald as well, they look to nullify his influence. Like if I think back in the game last year, David Fitzgerald got a few balls and they hit a few wides, made a few bad decisions. And even the fact that him, who's usually such a solid player going forward and makes really good decisions, when he did that, it nearly kind of crept in a bit of lack of confidence in the Clare team. And when you saw things that were uncharacteristic like that happening, you're going, okay, Jesus, maybe there's something off here with the Clare team. I think the other thing that Kilkenny maybe look to do will try and pull and drag John Conlan out of that number 6 position. Conlan is happy to sit in around the 45 on the D, get involved, get tackling, and start clear on the path going forward. But potentially throwing a centre forward in there that wants to sit quite a nice bit far out and ask questions of Conlan. If you feed balls to a player who's sitting quite far out and off his man at number 6, and Kilkenny start utilising it and start feeding them ball, it kind of causes questions to be asked, and Conlan then might have to step up, then creating space in behind him for the full forward line. So I think Kilkenny will have a few things there. But look, realistically, again, I do see Clare performing on Sunday. I don't see last year happening again. And again, I'd go at about a 3-point win for Kilkenny. And again, injuries are going to, like we said, play a huge part in this. As in Kilkenny need to have, hopefully we'll have Adrian Mullen on the pitch. Likewise, hopefully Clare have their full team as well, because we want to see 2 full teams going at each other here. But I just think Kilkenny have that panel strength to have the players to come in as well. And I'd be saying by the 2-3 points, we'll go with 3 for the moment. Kilkenny win.
Yep, not to piss you off, I'm going to go for Clare and Limerick, so I can equally annoy both of you.
Fair play. And walk around.
They're my quick picks early in the week. This is very, very instinctive, I think, at this point. And I think even when we see the teams named on Friday, let the football from this weekend be a warning about that, where Dublin named a team and then made 4 changes before throwing when they went to play against Mayo today. I do not expect John Kiley on Friday, maybe I'll be proven wrong, to name the 6 who will actually start at 6.
Yeah,
I think he will try and get in the mind of Galway, name someone who's not expected, and then Galway will have to double guess what he's doing. And by all means, Skell, I think Henry will be clever enough not to necessarily fall for a trap from what team comes out in a document, an Excel document on Friday.
No, in fairness, because if the shoe was on the other foot, he did the same thing himself, No, he's too long on the road, albeit most of the road is a player, but he's too long on the road overall. And even the manager team, there's a lot of experience there that whatever team comes out from both counties, both manager teams are going to look at the team selected, put in the programme and say, no, there's a strong chance, nearly 100% chance that we're not going to face that exact 15 come Saturday and Sunday. So, no, as I said earlier, we'll wait with eager anticipation to see who's going to be at the 6.
Yeah. Oh, look, I think these are going to be 2 really good semi-finals, by the way, and that's not just us hyping it up so people come along on Sunday. I think we still have to work out what the format is going to be for this Sunday, because Murph, you believe you're working with the BBC on Sunday at Croke Park?
I am, yeah. So there might be a small bit of analysis afterwards, yeah. So I could, and then I'll be getting, I think Lee Chin could be on, so I might be getting my photo taken with Lee Chin afterwards as a fan, have to fangirl in there.
Hold on a second, that's not totally missing opportunity here, because Skell and I are going to be at home watching the game because of the latest throw-in on Sunday. Why don't we just get Lee Chin with you on your phone, bring your microphone with you, and we can chat to Lee for a few minutes about the game as well?
Absolutely. No hassle doing that. No, I have to run it past him. I'm fairly sure he's going to be on. Neil McManus is going to be there as well, so we can get Neil McManus. We'll have a great demographic then between Antrim, Wexford, Kilkenny, Galway and Offaly. I think that works. By
the way, I'm not lying here, Skell. I think this is actually be quite a good idea, because once the guys go off air, if we're ready to go at a reasonable time, and I don't see why we can't bring the viewers along and have the 3 lads come on for a few minutes together.
Let's do it.
Not a bad shout. You're putting a lot of there's a lot of technology on my shoulders here now that I have to go and sort this out, bring my laptop, hope my laptop doesn't malfunction in Croke Park, get good Wi-Fi in Croke Park, and then also say to Lee Chin and Neil McManus, do you know the way you have a long drive home ahead of you? How about you and there's absolutely no fee for you, by the way, but just step in here. So I'll ask. I'll say it.
You'll be friends with them at that point.
What I'll do is I'll set up my phone and say, Lee, will you jump in here for a quick selfie? Or Neil McManus. And say, by the way, it's not a selfie. We're actually going live and off the ball. Did I say a selfie? I meant live show.
Yeah, well, I really meant. Yeah. Sorry.
And 2-hour live show.
And just we say to him is now, lads, right, there might be a bit of abuse flying. Don't worry about it. Just go with it. And don't be afraid to abuse people back, because it happens, all right? It just happens.
Yeah, look, we'll make something happen. Don't worry. It'll be
fine.
Don't forget that if you're going to Saturday's games and you want to go a little bit early and go for a tour of Croke Park, you can go with Murph. Borgosh Legends Tour taking place. Hurling, it is anyone's game. Off the Ball teaming up with the Senior Hurling Championship sponsors, Borgosh Energy. We're uncovering stories highlighting the positive impact that hurling has had on people's lives. Some special videos are coming to the Off the Ball YouTube over the next few weeks as well. The winner of this week's competition, which is hosted by our friends at BGE, is Anna O'Doherty, originally from Hungary. Anna has become heavily involved in her local club, which is 6 Mile Bridge in the county County of Clare. She's been training with the Junior Bees, coaching the under-10 Camogie team, and is the future secretary of the club. So I'm guessing that's coming up in December where she becomes the secretary. Our congrats to Anna, who's already been put forward for that position. She's getting a goodie bag from BGE. We have to work out the details of the live show this Sunday. I'd say keep an eye on our social media. We'll work it out between now and then, and we'll give you all the details. Because we want the listeners to be able to get involved this coming Sunday as well. We'll make it work. Lads, it's been a pleasure.
Sound, lads.
Seriously.
OTB's The Hurling Pod.
With Board Gosh Energy.
Hurling. It's anyone's game.